comfort zone because these people aren't playing games.
9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job. 9/11 was an inside job.
We're going to organize. Humanity's going to come together. We are swinging muskets here, toe-to-toe with the globalists. They're bloodied. We're bloodied. It is absolute total war. We are live. Thank you for joining us. It is 11/3/11, the third day of November 2011 on this Thursday transmission. And we are going to now broadcast for 27 hours. I will be here for, I think, comes out to about 18 of those hours. We'll take a nap for about 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night, but Aaron Dykes will be live. Paul Watson will be live. We have an incredible lineup of guests. This is our second annual 24-hour-plus transmission. It was actually Jaron's idea last year, and obviously we are having our fourth annual Moneybomb. And I'm going to break down briefly coming up at the start of the next segment who's coming up in the next 27 hours and exactly why we're having a money bomb to try to fund the expansion of this operation, obviously, and what your previous support has gone towards predominantly. Also, we are going to be premiering the second part of the Charlotte Iserby interview. The first part blew people away. Getting into education. The second part is Skull and Bones being exposed, and so that is coming up in the lineup as well. There is just so much that we're going to be doing here in the next 24-plus hours today into Friday. And, of course, I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning after going to bed at about midnight and then couldn't go back to sleep till about 7 for some reason, and I usually am a good sleeper. And then I slept till about 9, hung out with my children some, and barely got here on time. So that's why you never see me up here with my hair still wet. I tend to wake up, eat breakfast, hang out with the family, and then take a shower. I'm certainly just now jumping in the saddle, and I guess that's good in a way because I was just going to stay up once I got up at 4, and I was like, no, I better try to go back to sleep. I'm about to be up here for most of a day. It's really easy to do this compared to, what's the record filibuster? It's from Texas in the legislature, over 2 days. Can't sit down, can't go to the bathroom, and can't eat, and have to continually talk and cannot lean on anything. People are like, wow, you're going to broadcast 18 hours out of 27. Or I guess more than that, because I'm going to do 2 hours of the 3-hour show on Friday. I haven't done the math, so I guess it's more like 20 hours. That is a piece of cake. Now, where it gets tedious, though, is taking the calls, talking to the interesting guest, because I won't just be up here muttering like a lot of filibusters do. I've got to really be thinking, and I'm intrigued, just like the audience is, on all the guests. So I'm listening, I'm thinking, and that's actually what's really, really tiring about it. He's going over all the news. Boy, it is wild. I've got like 10 articles here, mainstream news, where, and of course, yesterday you saw Sky Television, London Guardian, Israel set to hit Iran. Netanyahu goes before the cabinet. He says he's getting ready to hit them. I don't know if they're going to attack. All I know is troops are massing in Kuwait. I've talked to a bunch of military on and off record who say the word they've got is Israel is going to strike. And they're set in the next few weeks to load that reactor. Now, what I said, some of my folks said it could happen anytime in the next 2 weeks. And by that, I mean 2 weeks out. It could happen anytime 2 weeks out. I think I said it could happen today. It could happen 2 weeks from now. It could happen a month from now. But this next 2 week period, they're getting ready to green light this thing. And they basically have green lighted it in Israel. And the U.S. is just standing by. But the reason it didn't basically already happen is that whole hoax concerning the Iranian used car salesman in South Texas wanting to attack this Saudi ambassador and bomb him at the embassy did turn out to be completely phony as a $3 bill. But still, we've got to talk about what this signifies. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It is Thursday, 11/3/11. It is the 3rd day of November, 2011. We're going to be live here for the next 27 hours. That's right. I will do at least 20 hours live here on air, but we also have Paul Watson sitting in for a few hours in the early morning hours. We have Aaron Dyke sitting in. We're going to premiere Skull and Bones expose with one of the only witnesses out there. We are going to have quite a transmission lined up for you. This is our second annual 27-hour transmission. Hour number one, I'm going to cover the news. Then we have historian and geopolitical researcher Joel Skousen joining us in the second hour to talk about Iran, the election, and so much more. Webster Griffin Tarpley will join us in the third hour. Katherine Albrecht, Dr. Katherine Albrecht will be joining us to talk about all of these announcements to censor the internet, to restrict free speech, and this panopticon of research control grid the government's put in place. Of course, the number 2 talk show host in the world, George Noory, will be joining us, host of Coast to Coast AM. David Icke will then be joining us coming up. So that's from 4 to 5:30. Then at 6 o'clock, we've got Mike Adams sitting in for my first break from 6 to 8 o'clock. Then I return. Alfred Adask will be joining us. And Mike Adams has got a bunch of guests lined up as well. When he's on, he'll be in studio. We appreciate him doing that. Tex Mars is going to be popping in with us as well at 10 o'clock tonight. That should be always interesting and informative. We've also have Mr. Corbett of the Corbett Report, always informative and interesting as well, is going to be joining us. Fritz Springmeier, fresh out of prison, now first breaking his silence here for being shut up for bank robbery. The author will be joining us coming up at 1 a.m. Central. All these times are Central. And then, of course, we also then have Aaron Dykes from 2 to 4. And he's got some guests and a bunch of premiere videos he's going to be playing. Paul Watson is going to be on from 4 to 6. And he's got a bunch of guests coming on with him and breaking news. Richard Reeves from 6 to 7. And then in here somewhere, I know we're scheduled to air the Charlotte Iserby. The guys are like, well, we've got a never-before-seen Nick Begich. We've got the Charlotte Iserby. They've kind of overdone it, and I think I'm going to select we air the Iserby because that's what people want to see. Begich is great as well. We can just put that up on prisonplanet.tv or premiere it on the news, nightly news or something. Gerald Salente then joins us at 8 a.m. Central. Then we're working on Alan Watt, Jim Mars, and, of course, Bob Chapman. And I guess only one of these has question marks, and that's Alan Watt, but that'll probably come through. So that's the only question mark on here. So, wow, what a lineup that we have. Great job to the crew getting this together, because these are incredible times that we live in. And unfortunately, our political analysis has been spot on. It's unfortunate in that we were right, because this is scary stuff. It's horrible. It's disgusting. It's dangerous. I would rather reality be different. We have a tyrannical, maniacal, eugenics-based, anti-human, anti-life culture and system and college and association and society of psychopathic control freaks who are protected by a bunch of well-meaning idiots, compartmentalized fools, useful idiots, but also sociopaths, mercenaries, control freaks, scum, sadists, and others. And they are weaving a web, like a spider weaves a web, of control. The same web that tyrants and control freaks have woven throughout history, but now so much more disgusting and filthy, and the numbers of killed are much higher because the population is larger, and there's a technological overlay, there's a psychotronic overlay, a chemical overlay, a spiritual overlay, a psychological warfare overlay, from the flicker rates with the TVs to the sodium fluoride in the water and the Prozac in the water, and that's basically what fluoride is, as Ventura pointed out yesterday. I mean, it's just wild. Tyrants have always tried to fully dominate, and they've always failed. And they hate the fact that they can't turn us into slaves, biological androids. They don't want us to have free will. Now, we got a lot of interesting news. The White House is being subpoenaed, as you know, over just legalizing illegal aliens, including felons, and not even deporting felons now. They're also being subpoenaed over the different energy companies that they publicly gave hundreds of millions, in some cases billions of dollars. It's billions in total, but 500+ million, to one of the main companies that is made up of his campaign contributors. They never basically built anything. It was just a complete scam. And why would they commit crimes of this magnitude? Because they know the rest of the government at the top is so corrupt that if anybody tries to actually bust them, they'll just rat them out for all the other issues. This is the corruption factor once it gets to a certain point. They also hold the rest of the system hostage because Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan and others control the derivatives. They control the Social Security. They run it all. They're now taking over the internet as we know it. They're now taking over free speech as we know it. This is a group of conscious criminals who have been told they can do whatever they want by their masters. And if the Republicans get uppity about Fast and Furious, they'll just expose government shipments of guns under Bush to Mexico and narcotics shipped in that are already in federal court, and the feds have admitted it's true, and we've covered it. El Paso Times, Chicago Tribune. It is a group of absolute criminals blackmailing each other, and so when you reach that point, the sky is the limit. I saw a cop car last night on 290 pushing... because they've got that little metal bumper, which is useful, pushing, I slowed down to even make sure I was seeing what I was seeing, pushing some old man with a broke-down pickup truck, looked like a pickup truck from the 60s, up the ramp, up out of the highway. Not calling a bunch of city trucks, not getting 20 bureaucrats out there to shut down the highway, pushing somebody's car up the ramp, up the road to the gas station at the top of the hill. I actually see police now more than I've seen in years. I used to see this all the time when I was a child, changing people's tires, helping them. Look, I know the average police officer is not a bad person, but I also know the system is trying to hire bad people, trying to train them to be corrupt, trying to train them that it's tough guy to violate people's rights. In fact, I have an article right here. This is out of the Sacramento Bee. That's the major paper of Sacramento. If you guys give me a document cam shot, I'll show people this for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. But this is up on Infowars.com now. Controversial T-shirt puts Twin Rivers Police Department in the spotlight, and it shows what looks like a 5-year-old child, almost toddler-like, maybe 4 or 5-year-old little boy, looking out from a grimy prison cell with grimy bars, and it says, "You raise them, we cage them." This T-shirt designed by the Twin Rivers Police Officers Association, and it just shows the sick attitude. I've heard the police radio transmissions that have made the news across the country where they talk about hunting people, and where they talk about all this, and it's this dehumanizing attitude. What police do to the rest of the public ends up coming back on them. It's like this retired police officer owns this big Trudy's down on Congress, and the city tried to shut it down. Gave him the permit to build the $150,000 giant deck, then said we're revoking it after it was built, and tried to harass him out of business, and then tried to send cops in to do stuff to him once they were suing him. My lawyer's the lawyer that sued him, Eric Taub, and won, by the way, and now Tab has city people basically making little snide comments and little veiled comments to him. But that came back on you. This schizophrenic guy who it later came out on the videos, they're in a suburb of L.A., didn't do anything to the police. They beat him to death and would do knee drops on his head over and over again for more than 10 minutes. You can kill somebody with one of those. They killed him. Then tried to cover it up. Now the police did charge one of the cops with murder. One of them murder, too. The other just basic murder. The point is that they're selling you on macho-ness and on corruption and that it's tough and cool. It's not cool. It's not cool. With great power comes great responsibility. It's honorable to be a servant. It's honorable if somebody, gets in your face to be in control. It's honorable to push an old man's truck up the road instead of just saying, I got better things to do. And see, government is trying to make it where police can't do things like that. All over the country, they've told police, it's come out in the news, don't respond to crime, go revenue generate. Don't help people, let them help themselves. Because they want the people separate from you. They want the people to see you as the enemy. Because they want us at each other's throats. When it's just common sense that what happens in society affects police. Your children go to the same schools as everybody else, same churches, same shopping malls, same shooting ranges, same lakes to go fishing. Do you want to live in a society with microphones in streetlights and they've now announced in hotel rooms saying, watch your neighbor, don't trust anybody, and the hotel guest may be terrorist, and it says paying with cash suspicious, and spy on people's bags in their rooms. I mean, this is beyond the Soviet Union. I mean, you really think we'll be safe? Look at the government at the top. They're a bunch of crooks. Only crooks set up governments like this, and people that work for the government have to ask themselves which side they're on. Stay with us. Big news coming up on Israel. Thursday, the 3rd day of November, 2011. We're going to be live here for the next 27 hours if you just joined us. I'm going to get into the economy. I'm going to get into U.S. news, world news. I'm going to get into the incredible announcements by the Israeli government that they are getting ready to strike Iran. And I told you 2.5 weeks ago that after the 2-week period, I was saying anytime after 2 weeks from now, they could strike. Because that's what my military sources have said. That's what Ray McGovern said. That's what Bob Baer said of the CIA. That's what all of these people came out and said. Of course, I was saying it the day before because I have sources. And Israel's trying to sell the idea of striking Iran. And so I think we should talk about what's going to probably happen if Iran is attacked. They've got polls in Israel. Some polls show 50-50, for and against. Some polls show 70+% against. So it's not just monolithic in Israel. Netanyahu got rid of his Mossad chief, a bunch of other folks earlier in the year because they were saying they're not going along with it. Now, why are they saying that? Why are people that are in Israel and in the government saying it's not a good idea? Why is the U.S. government saying that? And again, our government's really the big mega banks. They're not against wars. They love to bomb stuff and take stuff over. It's because Iran, through proxies, is going to attack Israel on all sides. And the different sides have gotten high-tech weapons out of China and Russia. And 3.5 years ago, you saw in Lebanon, and the Israelis, by the way, have gone back in there, quote, stop rockets. So there's already a force going in there to try to push back, in case there's a full-on war. The Israeli tanks and troops got pushed back, got defeated. Because the people they're fighting do have some high-tech weapons. They do have some anti-tank shoulder-fired missiles and other nasty things. And so any way you slice it, the Strait of Hormuz getting closed, I'm going to talk more about it later. This is a very, very serious time. And for those of you still in denial, when neocon groups or pro-war groups or government operatives on the internet come out and attack myself and others and say they're lying, there's no way they're going to attack Iran, no one's saying this, it's crazy. I mean, I noticed 2.5 weeks ago when I said the word is they're getting ready to hit Iran anytime from 2 weeks out. But they want to hit them before the winter comes the next few months. That's what all my guests concurred with me. I've never seen just so many internet attacks, media attacks, the usual suspect attacks, because they're getting the order. By the way, we see this all the time in the IP addresses, because we don't really moderate very much on Infowars and Prison Planet in the comments, except for calls for violence or posting somebody's phone number, and say, here's their house, go after them. We take stuff like that down. But Tim's been trying to get me to do a YouTube video or report about this and show the IP addresses. There'll be one person with 10 different identities having fake conversations with themselves And it's all government tactics. So we kind of find it interesting as a laboratory. But I think I'm going to start showing the IP address and actually do some reports, because they'll have in 10 different handles conversations with themselves and then say, looks like people are waking up to Alex Jones being a fraud. And it's one guy posing as 10 people. That's government megaphone program, they call it. They also call it sock puppets. I mean, they've admitted for a decade the Pentagon does this. They have hundreds of PR firms hired to do it. And, of course, we've got them after us. That's actually, come out before. But, wow. I mean, it's actually still incredible to see them doing it. So we're going to do some reports on that soon. So come on, trolls. Come on in and show people, because you're also illustrating this for everybody. People commenting on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, they see it too. They can tell by the writing style. And I've known this for years. I don't know why I haven't done a report on it, because it's very interesting to see one person posing as many as 20 people sometimes. But they'll use and all the same IP addresses, because that's what we, at a certain point we're like, all right, this person has 20 identities and they're spewing racism all day. Alex is great because he hates black people. Like they'll say stuff like that, so people that come to the site feel like they're not wanted there if they're black. It's all divide and conquer. It's all these tricks. It's all these things. But I saw the biggest push ever that I've ever seen in COINTELPRO and Disinfo when I came out 2.5 weeks ago and said, I guess it was October 13th, and said they've green-lighted an attack on Iran. Now, of course, you have the news today. Israel considers preemptive attack on Iran. Netanyahu goes before Knesset, says he wants to attack. Israel test fires missile. It's all over the news. They're going to probably attack. Now, continuing here with the situation in Israel, the fact that the system tried to come out and say that used car salesman, marijuana dealer, was going to blow up the Saudi embassy in D.C. The fact that it later came out, even in mainstream news, but buried in the newspaper, that it was anti-Iranian government opposition groups that were in contact with him, and Mexican drug cartels, and all of these former and current government experts came out and said, this is phony, this is an excuse to attack Iran. That's what was happening 2.5 weeks ago. As troops are moved into Kuwait, as the buildup happens, as our military bases go on secret alert. And now Netanyahu goes before the Knesset yesterday and says, I want to hit them. Last Friday, Washington Times reports they've done the prisoner exchange to get rid of their Palestinian prisoners, give up 1,000 of them for one Israeli soldier. All of this is going on. All of this is happening right now in a game of brinksmanship. They're coming in with more sanctions against Iran. Iran is scheduled in the next 2 weeks to load and fuel their reactors and to start purifying uranium. Now, the UN inspectors have been there, and they've said that they can't make weapons with this grade, but there's reportedly coming out next week an IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency report saying that Iran is secretly making fissile material. And Russia and China are protesting, saying the report is a fraud. That was in the news last night and today. This is all happening right now. You've got the fake report of the guy wanting to blow up the Saudi embassy. And you had Congressman King and others saying, hit Iran. It's on. So stop living in denial. Why would the government COINTELPRO want to come out and say there's no danger of Iran being hit? Shut up. It's not happening. It's all made up. Even now as the Israelis, and they were doing this 2.5 weeks ago. Panetta, the defense secretary, came back and said they're getting ready to hit. They're probably going to hit them. They're totally diplomatically isolated. The Washington Times, who's pro-war, talks to insiders last Friday and says Netanyahu wants to be seen as Churchill. He's politically a dead duck right now. He's not going to get reelected. This will get him reelected. And they're all right here in the news. And again, it's not that I get lied about and people say, oh, Jones is crazy just making it up that there's probably going to be an attack on Iran. I said the green light's been given. It's going to happen unless we expose this plot as a fraud of this Iranian car salesman in South Texas to do all this. Unless this is proven as a fraud now, they're going to use this to attack. And sure enough, it got proven as a fraud. So see, the government's doing two things here. The fact that I get attacked on this, it's not that it worries me that I'm being attacked over it. It shows me just how accurate we are. That they don't want Americans having a debate about the worst war yet of the 5 wars going on. So it's a military tactic, like when they're ramming into the Branch Davidians church with those tanks and saying this is not an assault, come out with your hands up, and they ran out and they mowed them down. We have the flare footage of the guys behind the tanks in an infantry tactic just shooting them and then running over their bodies and then bulldozing them with a Bradley fighting vehicle with a scoop on the front later back into the fire. And the ATF and Army posing with skulls and all the rest of it and blowing the little kids up inside the church records vault. That's the tactic, is we are not assaulting. So we're like, hey, you're getting troops ready. Israel's saying in their newspapers they're getting ready to hit. The U.S. is saying Israel don't attack. And they're moving troops into Kuwait telling them there's about to be an attack. And now you've staged this thing saying Iran was going to do this, clearly as a fake provocation. Hey, folks, they're green-lighting the attack. We better get the word out and stop it. They want to deny this is getting ready to happen so you don't politically put pressure on Washington to stop this. They don't want to debate about hitting Iran or not hitting Iran. They just want us out of the game. They don't want Americans having a debate. Because we've already come 3 times in the last 6-7 years within an inch. In 2007, Dick Cheney, now on record, and he admits it in his new book, ordered Fox Fallon, the head of CENTCOM, to attack, let me say this again, to attack Iran, and he didn't do it and had to resign. Then Cheney wanted to paint up blue patrol boats to attack U.S. ships there in the Gulf as a pretext. This has all come out. And the government said no again. So they're always trying to get this war going, always trying. Iran's almost 80 million people. They've got a lot more high-tech weapons than Iraq had. They weren't under decades and decades of sanctions and inspectors all over their country for 15 years and a bombed-out nation. And it is going to wreak havoc. I mean, they're going to block the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices are going to explode. It's going to be a political diversion for the banksters to steal more rights and more money and set up checkpoints. They're going to use the Iranian war threat to start setting up the domestic checkpoints. Notice they're rolling out the EAS takeover alert in November 9th. First time ever FEMA and Homeland Security totally take over the media, whether you like it or not. Notice they've got the TV ads, the PSAs, all this stuff rolling, TSA popping up on the street corners, telling you, we're surveilling you. This is all being geared up and prepared for something big. But the globalists aren't going to move with this plan if we have a debate about it and talk about it and point out how it's all a setup. So they just want to treat us like we're idiots and say, there's no talk about hitting Iran. Anybody that says we're going to hit Iran is a crazy conspiracy theorist. But wait a minute, Netanyahu's before the Knesset saying he's getting ready to hit and he's trying to get their support because it's a pretty big deal. No, he's not, Alex. Shut up, conspiracy theorist. But wait, I have AP, I have Sky, I have London Guardian. They all say they're getting ready to hit. Right here, I was right again that they're moving to. And they're like, no, Iran doesn't even exist. I mean, that's basically the mind game they play with us, and that's what really scares me. Is if I would have come out 2.5 weeks ago and said they're green lighting an attack on Iran. Anytime, 2 weeks out and then on from that point, if I wasn't credible, the system wouldn't even care. That's why we know they're getting ready to hit them now. I mean, they're admitting it. We know we've been proven right. So it's that we're so right, we're so accurate, we have our finger on the pulse of the geopolitical system. That's why we're bad. That's why we have to be demonized. UK military steps up plans for Iran attack amid fresh nuclear fears. And what do they say at the end of the Sky Television article? It says U.S. troops are being moved into Kuwait. As I told you 2.5 weeks ago, it was not in the news at that time. I even told you they were going to try the invasion against Gaddafi, NATO-backed in September, October. And, of course, it happened because I had military sources. And then you saw that happen. And then it got spun back, and they said, Alex is crazy. U.S. troops were never on the ground. They were admittedly on the ground. See, Obama says U.S. troops were never on the ground. You know why? Because they were under NATO flag. It's like saying our troops weren't in Bosnia. It was a UN operation. You see these little semantic games? It's kind of like Napolitano's now saying, I didn't perjure myself on Fast and Furious. We didn't call it that then. We called it Gun Runner. So I didn't lie when I said I'd know about Fast and Furious because we weren't calling it that yet. I knew about Gun Runner. But they said, you did this gun running Fast and Furious. I know nothing about gun running. Then she gets caught. Oh, I knew about Project Gun Runner. I didn't know about Fast and Furious. Same program. They just gave it another name. They play these games with you like you're an idiot. Because it does scare the system that we've got our hand on the pulse so closely. That we know what they're doing. I saw articles attacking us 8 months ago when we were predicting that they would use a ground rebel force in Libya next and then call those the legitimate government and back it up with NATO attack. I saw our articles and my videos. Where was it? I think it was on Little Green Footballs, one of the neocon sites, attacking me at the time going, look at this loon saying they're going to attack through proxies Libya, and then exactly what I said happened. That scares the system that I know what they're up to. With spending dozens of hours every day with all these top experts and guests, reading hundreds of news articles a day, poring over data and history and strategies and proxy warfare. Obviously, this is not hard. It's all telegraphed. Okay, let's continue here now. You have just joined us during the kickoff of the 27-hour marathon transmission, second annual marathon transmission. I want to ask all listeners to go to Infowars.com. In fact, we'll put this on screen. If you go to Infowars.com, you will see there in the featured news area a link. I need to restart my computer in here. I don't think it's been restarted in a week or two, and it's just not working. So I'm unable to use my computer. I need somebody to fix that for me if you can. Thank you. Or during the break, I can run over and do it, I guess. Great. But the point I'm here making is if you go to InfowarsMoneybomb.com, that's the best place to find it. I was trying to tell you on Infowars where it's at. Yeah, there's Infowars.com. Scroll down, and then there's a link there that says Infowars launches 24-hour plus offensive against tyranny. And if you scroll down there, you see our video feed of the next 27 hours, and then you see our other backup, and then you see our Justin TV, and you see our Ustream and other systems. And we've had over 1 million people in one day before tune into the free streams. In a 3-day period, we had 3.5 million during our Bilderberg coverage. And obviously, our servers can't handle millions of people tuning in. So if our servers go down, if those top links go down, you'll be able to watch on Justin TV and Ustream in other areas. Though we did crash Justin TV during that Bilderberg coverage in June. So that is all available there. Please get that link and share it with everyone. But really, the easiest place to find it is InfowarsMoneybomb.com. You go to InfowarsMoneybomb.com, you see live feed 1, live feed 2, live feed 3. And then we have backup feeds under that. And you can check out the entire transmission right there and all these guests that are coming up. And who's coming up? Joel Skousen of World Affairs Brief to break down Iran, the economy, give us his view on that. Webster Tarpley, geopolitical expert, will also be joining us. Katherine Albrecht. George Noory, the icon, #2 talk show host in the world. David Icke, Nizo introduction. Mike Adams will then 5 to 7 Central sit in with a bunch of guests coming up so I can get a break. Then we have Alfred Adass joining us, always amazing. Tex Mars. We have Mr. Corbett joining us, always informative. We've got Fritz Springmeyer, fresh out of being a political prisoner, joining us. Aaron Dykes then sits in for a couple hours, 2 to 4. He's got some guests as well that are going to be very informative. Paul Watson then sits in for a couple hours. Then Richard Reeves. Then I'm back at 7 a.m. So I'll do 20 hours out of 27. This says we're going to do the Begich video. I know I've told him I want to do Iserby. Begich is great, but this Iserby is breaking stuff. And we may do the Begich later if we have time. That's a premiere video. Then Gerald Celente joins me live. Then Alan Watt. Then Jim Mars. And then Bob Chapman. So you talk about powerful 27-hour transmission. And if you're listening on AM and FM and want to be able to watch the show as well, just go to InfowarsMoneybomb.com or Infowars.com to find those free audio and video feeds. Also, you can get 15 days free at prisonplanet.tv right now, free trial subscription. And your memberships also support this truly alternative grassroots media organization. Now, let me tell you why we're doing this Money Bomb. It's really elementary. It was listeners 4 years ago that had the idea for Money Bombs that helped move us into this bigger operation, buy more equipment, and spurred me to go to the next level. And by doing that, we've been able to radically expand our reach. 4 years ago, I was probably reaching 5.5, 6 million people a week total. It's 15 million conservatively. That's extremely conservative. 15 million people a week. 15 million. I have films seen online with over 35 million views per film. 35 million. Who else is at this level? Who else is opposing the globalists at this level? Who else is exposing them? Who else understands them? Who else has this incredible spectrum of guests with different perspectives so you can come to your own decision like I do? Who else? We have to go to the next level, and we have to be strong in case, knock on wood, we get sued. In case I get killed or in prison, this operation's got to continue. I'm trying to groom the reporters, the researchers, the people that know what they're doing. I've got a plan in place if something happens to me. Believe me, I take the threat serious. And I know these are criminals we're fighting. So it's very simple. And we've got some reserve backup capital to try to run this operation regardless. But to hire a couple of reporters and a second line of people to help us on the nightly news show. And I quite frankly think we need one more person on the radio area. We got 2 people, but when emergencies come up, we're shorthanded. We got 1 person right now. And we're going to do that too. We're going to get 1 more person in the radio. We need that. I'm making that decision right now. But the issue is that we need to get the personnel. We need some equipment. And so we're trying to raise $500,000. Sounds like a lot when you're running a big operation. When you actually run something with 30-plus people, you find out it's not jack squat. It's a lot, though, for a country falling apart. But look, when you give to Ron Paul, when you give to alternative media, when you buy organic food, you are voting with your dollars. And other revolutionaries rob banks. To fund themselves. We don't do that. We're restorationists. We're doing this through the free market, through books, video sales, subscription sales, and listener-supported money bombs. If the globalists get the public to give to all their anti-gun charities and things, and to NPR and things, why shouldn't we? That's another thing. They don't like me talking about a strike on Iran, and they hate this money bomb. Not just because of Alex Jones. They don't like the idea of people giving to patriot political causes, because if you did give across the board, we'd beat these people. And I am fired up, getting ready for this 27-hour transmission. Joel Skousen coming up to break down his perspective, his view on world events. Then we got Webster Tarpley joining us and a lot more today. But getting back to this money bomb, the idea of people giving, the idea of people all in, like in my mother's side of the family, William Ayers selling his land in New York and buying a ship full of Bibles, very expensive. He was a wealthy man, and coming to Texas to preach the gospel that he believed in, Protestantism, as a Protestant, because he didn't like the fact that everybody was being forced to convert to Catholicism. That helped create Texas today. And I'm not getting into some Catholic Protestant fight here. I'm just saying history's made by people that take action. History's made by people that step into the gap, people who step up and take action. And that's what I've done in the last 17 years. And I want to thank all of you that have donated at InfowarsMoneyBomb.com. We've raised over $60,000 now. We need to get all the way up to $500,000 by the end of the show tomorrow in this 27-hour transmission Money Bomb to be able to continue to expand our operation at the levels we need to and to buy the equipment we need to. Go watch the videos of what we've built in the last 3.5, 4 years. Thanks to your support, it allowed us to not gamble as much and to be able, by gamble I mean hire people and then go out of and then go bankrupt. It allowed us to grow and to be safe about that growth, because I don't want to be reckless with this operation. Okay, because it's such an important research facility, a system for reaching out to people. So again, ladies and gentlemen, prisonplanet.tv. You can support us by getting a prisonplanet.tv membership. You get 15 days anyways right now, free. You support us by going to Infowars Money Bomb and donating. Again, think about the fact that NPR gets up there, though it's government funded and Rockefeller funded. Listen to who funds it. And then they also beg for money 3 or 4 times a year, every day. So they can sit there and put out anti-family, anti-gun, anti-freedom garbage. Now, there's some good PBS facilities in the country run by good people. So I'm not even trying to bash public television. I've actually seen some good out of that. But the point is they still have government funding and then big mega banker funding, foundation funding, and then viewers like you. So it's very elementary. If you believe in what we're doing and you believe it's good to give to a cause of waking people up, please donate. But listen, I do not want little old ladies who aren't doing well to give me 1 dime. I don't want young people who aren't doing well to give me anything. Spread the word about the show. Spread the word about the information. That's the most important thing. Spread the word about this transmission that's taking place right now for 27 hours straight. But for those of you that own businesses, those of you who don't like collectivism and tyranny and the banksters, who else is going to call for the arrest of the banksters? Who else is going to really point out what's happening? Who else is going to expose the system? Who else is going to expose the left-right paradigm and how they operate? Who else is going to give you results like you've seen here with the Infowars family? So I'm going to tell you right now, go to InfowarsMoneyBomb.com if you want to make us stronger, if you want to see us grow even faster, if you want to see us expand what we're doing. We are doing the best job we can. We are busting our hind ends. I didn't leave here till 9:30 last night. And you know what? I'm not even seeing my family hardly now these days. But you know what? It's worth it because they have no future if we don't do this. So spread the word about InfowarsMoneyBomb.com. Tell folks about the incredible 27-hour transmission. Spread that link out to everybody and donate now at InfowarsMoneyBomb.com. Thanks for joining us. Joel Skousen coming up in the next segment. We got Webster and Tarpley coming on. We're going to get into all this incredible police state, geopolitical news. All of it is coming up. Now, continuing here today, we're having the 4th annual Money Bomb, which is added treasure, as the Founding Fathers would say, to fund our info war against the globalist. You know, a couple of their Hellfire missiles cost $500,000 that they're dropping on people. And the government takes your money, forces you to then give it to their systems, which are given to offshore banks. They don't give you a choice. We give you a choice. If you want to give your money in a place where it has more bang for its buck than anywhere else, then it's InfowarsMoneyBomb.com. Or just go to Infowars.com. There's a big, giant banner on the top of the screen. You click on that, and it takes you over there to the site where you can donate on PayPal, credit card, you name it. Also, I was going to do a bunch of pen and inks and even some acrylic, and I got so busy I never did it. But during my 2-hour break tonight, when Mike Adams is doing the show, I'm gonna have him go over to Hobby Lobby or wherever and get me the art supplies. The problem is I know what I need, and maybe I'll just run over there and do some, just because it's an idea I've always wanted to do it. Just some fast, quick paintings of different things, some political stuff, and then we're going to sell those on the eBay. There's a big link at InfowarsMoneyBomb.com to our eBay selection. It's got Tyranny Crusher 2. We've actually used this for more than 2 years. It says on the eBay we've been using it for 2 years. Actually, this was my spare. We've had this, I think, 5 years. And the other one got broken 4 years ago at the DNC when the MSNBC people attacked me with a knife and it's all on video, and cut it. So this is Tyranny Crusher 2. It's been used for 5 years, off and on, totally in the last 3.5, 4 years. And it's signed by me, yours truly, Alex Jones. And it has the 2011 on it. And it says TC2, Tyranny Crusher 2 on it. And it's also got a pig on it that says In the Fed. And this is up there for bid. Right now on the eBay site, we got a bunch of other... We printed out a bunch of Obama Deception Fall of the Republic color printouts to cover the wall with them to shoot promo videos for the films. And they've hung here in the office for 3 years and a year and a half, respectively. We're now signing those. I'm signing those and pulling them down off the wall. So we're now pulling them down off the wall. We're going to be, I mean, whatever raises capital so that I can hire 4 or 5 more people and buy some more equipment. And because, again, with the Nightly News, I need to hire at least 2 or 3 more people to have a second string to be trained, so that when people go on vacation, when things happen, so that we basically have that cushion. And it's not even a cushion. You have to have it or you go crazy. That's why I'm grooming Aaron into the Nightly News some. Mike Adams also does a great job, comes in some and does it. I'm trying to get McBreen, who's a really smart, good guy, great reporter, to also do the Nightly News sometimes, to where I'm doing it about 4 nights a week. Somebody else is doing it 1 night a week. Because I also then have a plan to start other shows. I want to start a shooting show, maybe even 5 nights a week, about the Second Amendment. I got all these ideas I want to launch. And if we build it, they will come. You have come. We've done incredible things. But in the face of this New World Order onslaught, I know that it is my responsibility to do even more. And that's what I'm doing. And you understand that. You resonate with that. You realize that. If you want to be part of this incredible historical thing we're doing together, donate today, InfowarsMoneybomb.com. But even more important, for this 27-hour transmission, get that link to InfowarsMoneybomb.com and send to everybody and say, there is a 27-hour broadcast happening here. Or send them the Infowars link that we've got as well, because it's so important to get this out to people. It is so important that they know this is coming up. And we're already into the second hour of it. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Now into hour number 2 of the 27-hour live transmission. It's the 4th annual Infowars.com Money Bomb to buy equipment and hire more personnel. You've seen the Nightly News we've launched in the beta testing phase. Now we're going to start moving it into syndication to select cable and TV systems that want it. It won't be like a big national show on one big giant network. We'll have to deliver it here and there, but we've already got folks in different parts of the world and here in the U.S. ready to get it. Some TV stations are already grabbing the internet stream or downloading the higher quality file after it's over every night and airing it, like down in Houston, Texas. I need to create a whole list of where we're on as well. We have the syndicated radio show. We have the films we make. We have the news websites, Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. It has been my goal to start an internet TV network for a decade. And now you see it proliferating because the technology has gotten here. And we've been streaming this radio show out as a type of television show with videos and documents and articles and guests. But now we're moving even deeper into that with reporters, investigative journalists, people flying all over the country, doing dozens of interviews a month via Skype, several a month in person, traveling around the country. We are moving into the next level, and it's the book sales, the video sales, the sponsors that make this show possible. But also, listeners 4 years ago had the idea for a money bomb. And I was like, no, I'm just going to stay here at my little 4,000 square foot office, make films, do the radio show. And they said, but they got all these people to pledge, and all these donations came in. So I said, okay. And that pushed us to do what we've now done, and gave me the idea to really try to grow in the face of the globalists, to give it all I can. And we've done that. You know, most revolutionaries rob banks to fund themselves. Well, I'm not a revolutionary. I'm a restorationist. I want our republic, the rule of law, common law, the Constitution that our forebears set up. I want that back. But I noticed when they were doing the money bomb 4 years ago, the COINTELPRO operative screamed with anger. Because it's not just attacking Alex Jones. The idea of patriots, constitutionalists, libertarians, Christians, giving money to anti-New World Order groups. That idea frightens the New World Order, because they got all the rich and powerful to pull their money to set up world government. They got your tax money on top of Rockefeller money and on top of begging locally to fund all this NPR to push anti-gun, anti-family trash. They've set up their own system. They have United Way and others raise billions of dollars on 9/11 and then keep half the money and spend most of it on gun control. See, that's why the system screams in anger. Just like 10 years ago, you couldn't buy organic food anywhere. Going to Joel Skousen in a moment. You couldn't buy organic food anywhere. Now, because people wanted it in the market, it's displacing the garbage. People won't buy milk now with the bovine synthetic hormone in it. You see, it's happening. We're voting with our dollars. When you spread the word about Infowars.com, when you go to Infowars.com and get the video links, because we're streaming all this out for free right now, the next 27 hours, and send that out to others. We sent folks to Bilderberg, and just on Justin TV, in 3.5 days, we had 3.5 million views on one little channel we just set up. Not just the 3 million that tune into this show every day, 3 million extra, just on one little internet system. Bill O'Reilly's the king of TV because he has 2 million viewers every night. They're paper tigers. That's my point. We've reached 300 million people in the last 2.5 years on YouTube alone. By the way, we've now caught them with Ron Paul and myself not letting our new videos be searchable, but Obama's are. Oh, yeah, there's something going on at YouTube right now. You can check it for yourself. There's all sorts of things going on that are very sneaky because the system's scared. They're coming out saying they want to start censoring the web. In England, they're calling for it. They have this piracy bill that even members of Congress say will end the web as we know it in due process. They're getting ready to launch a false flag on the web to try to start cracking down on it more. It's all coming down. We need to energize the alternative media now more than ever. And quite frankly, I could probably run around and add more ads to the show and do stuff and fund our growth. But people like a chance to give. And the fact that the system is so scared of this and comes out of the woodwork when we talk about a money bomb and attacks us, that shows I need to be doing this. Perhaps more. Also, support our local AM and FM affiliates. If you're a local business, sponsor the stations I'm on. If you're listening to a local station, call them, thank their sponsors. Put your money where your mouth is, like our founders did when they pledged their names, their honor, their treasure, their family, their sacred honor, all of it on the cause. All we're doing in the InfoWar is saying, spread the word about us, support us, donate at InfoWarsMoneybomb.com. Got a lot of items up at eBay, too, and the auction that also support us. I'm going to add some more stuff there today. It's all at Infowars.com or InfoWarsMoneybomb.com or PrisonPlanet.tv. Now, coming up in the next 47 minutes or so, we're going to get into Israel considers preemptive attack on Iran. Is this more saber-rattling, or they've hit Iraq before? They hit Syria 3 years ago, hit one of their nuclear facilities. In 81, they hit Iraq. Netanyahu's asking for permission right now in the cabinet. They're arguing about it. And I've got family in the military and others. They say they've been told it's going to happen, that Israel's going to attack and the U.S. will have to mop it up or have anti-missile cruisers in the area. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. If we get the word out, we can stop it. I want to get Joel Skousen's take on that. I want to get his take on the economy. I want to get his take on what's happening in the White House, fast and furious, this accelerated rollout of EAS alert, first-time takeover, November 9th, where the government's going to take over all the communications for the first time without stations voluntarily going over to it. I want to get into all of this with Joel Skousen. But coming up, Skousen, Tarpley, Albrecht, Noory, Icke, Adams, Robert Scott Bell, so many others, Corbett, Tex Mars, we've got Jim Mars, Bob Chapman, Richard Reeves, Aaron Dykes, Fritz Springmeier, Paul Joseph Watson, and others. And we're going to premiere a Skull and Bones video here with Charlotte Iserby, never before seen. We aired part one earlier in the year. It took us this long to get it together and edit the new part. And it's stuff never before seen or heard, some of this stuff. Okay? I know Aaron's been staying up for 2 days to finish it. Point is, that's all coming up today. All here. And the free video streams are at Infowars.com. Get them. Get that out to everybody. That's how you can donate right there, is just spreading the word. And I see the donations are pouring in. Let me give you the number, then we're going to Joel. 888-253-3139. If you want to call in and donate, 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. We got 8 people back there to take your calls. They're going to be there throughout the night. And I'm going to be up. I'm going to go to sleep at 2 till about 5. I'm going to get up, read more of the news at 5, take a shower and stuff, and then I'll be back, on the air, of course, until The show ends tomorrow at 2 o'clock. That's 27 hours. But live overnight for those 4 or 5 hours, we're going to have Watson and Aaron Dykes with some guests. You don't want to miss that. So again, 888-253-3139. It's the 4th annual Infowars Moneybomb. The idea of the restorationists using the free market and your free will donating to build this. We're not like the government that takes your money and then bailout money and then gives it to MSNBC secretly. That's now come out. We don't do that. We're saying, if you believe in this, donate to us. Now, going to the balance of the hour and a little bit into the next, we can do it because Tarpley's coming up at 8 after. We're joined by Joel Skousen, a political scientist by training. He, of course, was also a fighter pilot. We've gone over his bio many, many times here on air. And he is a world-renowned expert on strategic relocation, I guess bunker housing type systems. He publishes the World Affairs Brief. We also sell his book. It's one of our best sellers, Strategic Relocation, the latest edition with all color photos about safest areas in the country. And I've done my own research. I agree with his analysis. So joelskousen.com. And, of course, you can get that all at Infowars.com. We're going to go to break here in about 3 minutes, Joel. Thank you for joining us during the Money Bomb. But out of all the things that are happening right now, just give us a brief summary overall of your take on what's happening. And then we'll come back, get into Iran, the economy, and more.
Well, thank you, Alex. It's really a privilege to be on this very worthy cause, and thanks for the call. Things are really starting to move rapidly. One of the key elements that I saw was this decision to pull out of Iraq when they had no intention of pulling out. They were really stymied by the Iraqi opposition, but I think this Iran war is going to be there. And it's the only reason I could see why they're pushing up all of this propaganda, which lets the Iranians know this is coming very, very soon, and sacrificing military secrecy, which normally accompanies a preemptive strike, so that it's a surprise. We'll talk a little bit more about the background I have on what I think the various parties are up to on this. But we are facing a major crisis right now in the economy because of the European debt situation. Greece has thrown a monkey wrench into the European debt resolution and bailout. The markets are responding extremely negative. And I think what's coming up that we really need to look at and talk about is what's coming up in November when the Super Committee brings out its report relative to the cuts that they're going to propose. I don't think Congress is going to be able to vote for those cuts. The automatic cuts will then trigger in. And I think this Occupy Wall Street movement, even though it's beneficial to our movement in the sense that it's attacking Wall Street, it is a leftist-based organization. And I think that they're going to trigger a great deal of extreme violence and other further unrest when these automatic trigger cuts come in. So far, they really haven't got the wherewithal to do a major escalation of these demonstrations until that November report comes out. So that's coming up this month.
Well, Joel, that's extremely interesting, and I concur with your breakdown. Let's go through all of this on the other side. We've got Joel joining us via Skype from his home. We may go to telephone here in a moment, though, because his audio is really, really low for radio listeners out there. But this is going to be important information, obviously, straight ahead. My sources are Israel is planning to attack Iran. And I said that 2.5 weeks ago. Now you see them openly saying they want to. So we're proven right again. And we'll get Joel's take on all of this on the other side. We could still stop it, though. Or we'll get Joel's take on it if he thinks we can still stop it. Right, Joel Skousen is our guest for 5 minutes into the next hour. Then Webster Tarpley joins us to give us his geopolitical perspective. Joel, so, wow, this is really news I don't like to hear because I respect your geopolitical analysis and view. Just to get it straight, you're concurring that they pretty much have green-lighted an attack on Iran. How long ago, B, were you aware of this? And then you were getting into what this means militarily to be announcing it and what the whole point of that is. So please continue.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, and it's going to be the lead story on the World Affairs Brief coming out this Friday about this really difficult military decision. Now, this story has been green-lighted, or at least the attack on Iran has been green-lighted clear back to 2004,
We know that because there was a major break in security in an insider meeting in the City of London that I reported on in the World Affairs Brief, whereby one of the persons who wasn't supposed to be there at the meeting was inadvertently invited. And they talked openly about the fact of how displeased the globalists were that Israel had not gone forward in their strike on Iran, and that was clear back in 2004. So this isn't something new. But what's interesting, in 2007, the establishment had to reverse its attack on Iran. They had 3 carrier task force off of Iran ready to do it in the fall of 2007. You were covering that, I was covering that, and all of a sudden they came out with the National Intelligence Estimate, the NIE, which said suddenly that Iran had dropped their nuclear program, they were no longer a threat, and people said, what's going on here? And of course this was because, I believe, and that was my analysis, that Ron Paul, who was the only Republican running in 2008 on a very strong anti-war platform and was gaining popularity fast, the United States knew that they couldn't do a preemptive strike on Iran without engendering a great deal of anti-war feeling in the United States that would accrue to the political benefit of Ron Paul. So suddenly, as soon as Ron Paul was defeated in the nomination process and really manipulated out of the show, suddenly the NIE reversed itself. So go figure. Obviously, they were back on track that Iran is now a threat, and they've been pounding that drum ever since. But we've never seen a crescendo of propaganda and war beating of the drums as we've seen in the last 2 weeks. Every mainstream newspaper is touting all of the Israeli stories about the things that you mentioned going on in the cabinet. This really isn't a matter of strain and negotiation with the cabinet. All of them are on board. And what's interesting, though, is that there's a bunch of propaganda coming out of the U.S. press about the trip of Leon Panetta to Israel, saying that he was going there to stop Iran from this. And that was
You're saying that's a show of deliberation, to act like they thought things through.
Absolutely true, and it's absolutely false. And so was the propaganda that Leon Panetta tried to stop this. He was going there to coordinate U.S. strategy. You go first, we'll come in and finish things up in a big way so that we can take the heat off of Israel.
But they'll need to stage something after. Well, I know I've had family sent to Kuwait. I've talked to others. They're being told Israel will strike, and I don't want to give up too many sources, but they're at least telling mid-level military people that it's on, and before the winter gets too deep. So that's why I said 2.5 weeks ago, I said within 2 weeks, then that's the danger zone. And then now, of course, it's all over the news that they're going ahead with this attack. Joel, is there any way from your view to stop it?
No, I really don't believe so. The only thing that has stopped it up at this point is the failure to get to induce Iran to do or to succumb to a Gulf of Tonkin episode. They tried to do it a couple of years ago when the U.S. Navy went into the Gulf of Hormuz, and they had the Iranian speedboats harassing them, and they came on U.S. black operations on the radio on their frequency, speaking, with Iranian people speaking as if the speedboats were going to attack the U.S. Task force. And the U.S. commander didn't take the bait. He refused to attack the speedboats, and that's what saved us from a Gulf of Tonkin thing at that point. What I think they're heading for now is coming up this next week is a new UN report. I think it's going to be very negative against Iran. It's going to build up the fact that their nuclear program is going forward. The U.S. will beat the drums for UN increased sanctions. They may try to get the cutoff of gasoline, which ends up being a similar act of war to what produced the Pearl Harbor attack on Japan when Britain cut off their sources of fuel and gasoline to Japan. It's a very similar stress.
Joel, stay there. Long segment coming up. I concur with your analysis, unfortunately. I wish this wasn't what we're moving into. And so I want to look at, if the strike comes, which is probably 95% chance now, barring a miracle, and we saw that with Fox Fallon refused as well, as you said in 2007, 2008. Barring a miracle, then what's going to happen? What do you think the aftermath will be of that? How does China tie in? How does Russia tie in? Joel Skousen again, fighter pilot, a decorated, I think a Marine Corps fighter pilot. I haven't scanned over his whole bio today. And worked in so many areas. His, of course, uncle, Cleon Skousen, wrote really some of the original handbooks that did accurately map what the globalists are up to, this whole crony anti-free market system. But, Joel, you were getting to the critical juncture here that you believe they are. I mean, obviously, they're flaunting it publicly. So this isn't just some political saber rattling to make Iran back off. I mean, is that what you're saying? They're about to fuel the reactors in the next 2 weeks. When would you expect, and from your sources, what are you hearing is going to happen in the strike? My family, others, and of course, public sources as well have said the U.S. is planning that once Iran is hit, to, quote, back it up, as you said, finish it off out of Kuwait. Give us your details on that, and then from bad to worse, the ramifications of this, what you think is going to unwind and why the global elite are doing this. Is it more about a diversion for the new Bank of the World, Vatican calling for Bank of the World, and calling for a global currency? I mean, as you said, the quickening is happening, but you've said you believe it really gets crazy in the next 10 years out. So if this is just a birth pain, my God, what's coming next? So kind of cover that spectrum. You've got the floor.
Thanks, Alex. Let me give some background here. There are two major agendas in this globalist vice that is squeezing the world. One is going to be military. Military is able to conjure up the worst propaganda in terms of false patriotism and get even conservatives to go along with what the government wants. And squeezing people financially does another thing. Those are the two primary thrusts of the New World Order. Military squeezing of people to give them power to resolve military conflicts, and then squeezing them financially with a massive catastrophe that they themselves created and giving them the power then to so-called resolve it. I'll cover the economy later, but let's go to the war pincer movement. It's been well documented on your show and your researchers as well as mine that strategically this war in Iran is the reason why the United States government, black operations and everything, had focused on attacking Iraq and attacking Afghanistan even before the false flag 9/11 operation. Those were the two nations they wanted to go into. Why? One of the reasons is, well, it's not only to capture Iraqi oil and to continue to aggravate the Muslim world by entering Pakistan and Afghanistan, but ultimately there was going to be a pincer movement on Iran. Iran is a huge pot of oil. Iran is a huge power structure, both military and intellectual, in that area of the country. And what we're seeing is this scissors play coming out. We've got Afghanistan to the east of Iran, and you've got Iraq to the west. Both are full of military bases and military personnel. We're at the perfect squeeze movement, except that the U.S. is facing the loss of the bases in Iraq at the beginning of the next year. And I think that is why they pushed up this schedule on Iran, because they've always intended to build these huge 5 major bases. There's 14 total bases in Iraq, but the 5 major bases were built and oversized specifically for what's coming up on attack on Iran. And that's why I think they've had to raise the schedule. And as I said, that's the reason why they sacrificed military secrecy in order to justify this in the public eye. There's a tremendous anti-war sentiment in the United States because of the budgetary problems. Ron Paul's message is resonating with people. We cannot afford another $1 trillion war. So they've got to have a major excuse to pull this off. And as I said, I think they're going to work through the UN. They're going to work through increased sanctions, gasoline cutoff of Iran to try to get Iran to react militarily. I don't think this is going to happen. I think Iran has decided they're going to wait for a preemptive strike so that they've got the appearance of non-aggression on their side when they retaliate. Here's how I think this is going to play. Let me just first of all cover Russia and China's view in this, because a lot of people are focusing on the fact that Russia and China are both still sending over a great deal of military technology to Iran.
And they've decried this report that they've already seen that comes out next week claiming Iran secretly developing nukes.
That's correct. So, but as happened in Iraq, and it's very important, that even though Russia was military supporting Iraq, during the first Gulf War, they were sending in transport airplanes with military reinforcements during the entire, and they weren't touched by American pilots. They're still going to play that game as if we're going to support you, Iran, but I don't think they will. I think they're going to pull out and let Iran fall to this attack. So I don't think we're going to be able to, they're going to support them in the UN. They're going to veto any sanctions, but they're not going to support Iran when it
Well, I
comes to
tend to
militarily.
agree, because there's actually been, for those that don't know, historically, a lot of enmity between the Russians and the Iranians.
Well, and that's because the Iranians don't want to be controlled by either the Chinese or the Russians, and the Russians don't like that, and the Chinese don't like that. But nevertheless, there's a longer-term agenda here that's very important, and I made this point on previous shows. This is not going to lead to the World War III scenario that I'm predicting, the nuclear war that Russia and China are preparing for long-term. They're at least 10 years out on that. But they must prepare the world for the image that the U.S. is the bully of the world. Every time they allow the United States to come in and wipe out a nation like Iraq, take over and oppress it, and Afghanistan, they gain points in the world. They create hatred against the United States. We ourselves are creating that hatred by our intervention. This is building the excuse for this great war that they're planning, and I think that explains why North Korea is being pampered while Iran is being attacked. North Korea is being carefully kept in position as a nuclear power, as a trigger for World War III, and as I say, I think that's a long-term off. But the important point is to realize that Russia and China have a real purpose in allowing the U.S. to come in and devastate Iran, and here's how I think it's going to play out. I think Israel is going to do a preemptive nuclear strike, not nuclear strike, but preemptive conventional strike on nuclear facilities, just enough to trigger Iranian retaliation. Now, they sent out a warning to Iran and the rest of the world by testing a long-range Jericho missile, which is capable of carrying nuclear weapons. I think they're telegraphing a message to Iran, don't even think about throwing any big weapons at us, or we'll retaliate with missiles. But we have to remember that it is my analysis that this exchange between Iran and Israel will lead, first of all, to an American intervention, and that intervention will be massive. I think the caretaker facilities in the Iraqi bases will immediately be downloaded from U.S. Troops in the United States. It will start to launch a massive interdiction in Iran if they retaliate at all, or in the least, either to Israel or to U.S. bases in Iraq. But the U.S. retaliation will be more than just the nuclear facilities. Just as they went into Libya on false pretenses of humanitarian action, they went into physically interdict militarily. They're going to do this in a way that we haven't seen before.
And they'll trigger all of their disruption rebel groups and then call that the opposition. That's their new model. It's really almost like the Soviet model, where they would, in Eastern Europe, would foment terrorist groups, then call them the legitimate government. Then the Russians would roll in. I mean, this is really almost a Red Army type tactic like we saw in the 40s, 50s, 60s. But now expanding on that, what was it, just 4 years ago, they purposefully leaked in even Time magazine the two different U.S. plans of what they're going to hit in Iraq. And one of them was hundreds of sites. The other was thousands. Their entire infrastructure, their bridges, their airports, their power, anything, quote, that could aid the military, their entire infrastructure, bombing it to the Stone Age. I mean, what a humanitarian crime that will be. Why, Joel, would they put out the different attack plans? And what's the point of putting the attack plan out today?
Well, they're not really putting out the detailed attack plan. I personally think, for example, that Israel has a problem in that it wants to avoid going over Syria. Syria has serious Russian anti-aircraft missile batteries. And so that's why Israel has gotten permission from Saudi Arabia to overfly their nation. They're going to take the southern route over to Iran, overflying Saudi Arabia, and trying to thread the needle down between Jordan and Egypt so that they don't get into trouble or try to trigger any wars by these strikes that are going out there. But I think what's going to happen, they're going to have that preemptive strike with using the bunker-busting bombs that the U.S. has recently transferred to Israel on the nuclear facilities. There'll be a retaliation against U.S. and Israeli targets. And then I think all hell's going to break loose in the Middle East. I think that's going to be the trigger event that Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt will all universally join forces and launch what Israel, the worst nightmare they could face is the barrage missile attack. There's over 3,000 missiles aimed at Israel and these other three countries around them. And if they launch them in barrages, the Arrow anti-ballistic missile system that Israel has will simply be overwhelmed. It might be lucky to take out a dozen of those incoming missiles, but hundreds and hundreds of them will fall on Israeli targets. And, of course, this will generate tremendous backlash patriotism around the world on behalf of Israel, and the U.S. will use it to join forces. I completely agree they're going to follow the same pattern as they did in Iraq. They're going to devastate infrastructure to bring Iran to its knees. They do not want to have to occupy Iran. We don't have the troops. There's no tolerance for occupying Iran. So they must bring it completely to the knees so that the Iranian government simply gives up and lets the New World Order impose its will upon Iran without occupation. And that's the difference between now and Iraq.
Now, we know the Iranians 20-something years ago, when they had Tinker Toy weapons compared to what they have now, put up an incredible 7-year fight against Saddam and the full U.S. backing, and over 1 million of them died. I mean, looking at the different profiles of the Iranians, and there's 80 million of them instead of 25 million Iraqis, I mean, this is probably going to get super nasty.
The U.S. attack plans plan to fight this war at a suitable distance, specifically because of this vastly increased Iranian arsenal. You are not going to see any of our ships go into the Straits of Hormuz until we have devastated first all of the naval assets of Iran, which have potent sea-skimming missiles, which could be devastating. And Iran does have, long-range missiles, medium-range missiles that can reach Israel and can reach naval forces. So the U.S. is going to do a stand-back, long-distance attack until
certainly, but what about the proxy forces, Hezbollah, other sleeper cells? I mean, that's the Iranian tactic, is going to be not just missiles, but they're going to undoubtedly turn loose asymmetrical squads in Israel and other areas. I mean, all hell is going to break loose.
Absolutely. We're going to see a total Hezbollah attack into Israel. We're going to see it crossing the border. Israel's going to have its handful, especially with missiles raining down. I think Syria's going to unleash all of their missiles. And they have ground forces. They have tanks. This is going to be a massive Middle East war, in my opinion. It's not going to end soon, and it's not going to end easily. It's not going to be like a cakewalk that relatively Iraq was for U.S. forces.
Yeah, I've talked to military people I know who are usually, it's no problem. For years, they've said, we don't want to attack Iran, and now they're really concerned because they realize this is going to be a big, nasty war, and the Iranians aren't going to give up, and I think the people that think that they're going to bomb them, and then they're going to have an uprising of, the young people that want to listen to rock and roll, that's not going to happen. When their own country's bombed, most of those peaceniks are going to end up joining the mullahs.
Absolutely. There's going to be a tremendous patriotic rebellion against the West, against Israel in Iran.
All right, well, let's come back, Joel, in the next 2 short segments with you. Wow, I could talk to you all day. We really appreciate you joining us. And get your view on why they're doing this now. Obviously, for the political distractions for this new Bank of the World being set up that the Vatican and others are talking about. Joel Skousen's our guest. World Affairs Briefs, his website. We'll tell you the website. Globalists weren't ready for this to be public 3 weeks ago. They attacked me big time when I said they were greenlighting the attack on Iran, because they don't want you to have a debate about that. They just want to sell you the propaganda. But it did basically blow up in their face, that fake Iranian thing with the used car salesman. That came out and turned out to be fake. They don't care. They're moving along with this new report that they're developing nukes. If you want to learn about strategic relocation, North American Guide to Safe Places, 3rd edition, we sold out of this for a while, but we've got it back in. It's available at Infowars.com. Joel Skousen's excellent book. And purchase of books, videos, not just, only supports our operation, but the authors themselves. We've also got a deal, because of all this stuff coming down, where I'm selling our bumper sticker packs at cost. This is at cost. It was $25 to get the 25-pack of bumper stickers. Now it's $5.95. That's at cost. We've got the patriotic Don't Tread on Me flags. We've got the Alex Jones Essential Special, 5 of my best films for $24.95. We have the Alex Everything Special. How many films is that? It's like 12, 13, 14 films. You can go look it up. Normally $349. It's $99.95 right now. The Alex Jones Everything Special, all of my films. So that's available as well. And don't forget InfowarsMoneybomb.com. We only do this once a year. And we fight back against NPR and the rest of them by saying, hey, why not donate to help build our larger media operation? We're not just doing a radio show here, but the films, the news websites, all of it. Going back to Joel Skousen, Joel, I was getting into the point of why are they doing this? We've talked about it looks like they're going to do it. This is what will happen militarily. But why is the establishment doing it right now? I mean, clearly it's because they're openly bringing the world into global receivership, announcing the Bank of the World, the global currency, or at least the beginnings of it, or are there other factors?
Personally, Alex, I do not believe that the global currency is anywhere near in the offing. They keep talking about it's going to take years of talk. You just don't have enough money creation power in the world to replace what the dollar has spewed forth around the world. We've spread our inflation. It's 100 times larger than any other currency.
Sure. Why launch the war now then?
Well, I believe the war is being launched now specifically because their major kingpin in this pincer attack on Iran is losing the bases in Iraq. They want to move this before they actually have to go through with the Iraq withdrawal. I've been predicting this for years, that the U.S. would do anything to keep from having to abandon those bases there. And I think this is why it's happening. It's a short-term approach. They've been trying to get this Iran attack off the road in a long time, and that's why they're beefing up the propaganda. But that attack, I think, is going to go forward regardless, even if they have to do it completely preemptively, and that's why Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, keeps beating the drums about Iran is our biggest threat, and that threat is growing.
And by the way, that'll help him politically, and also the neocons have told Obama, do this, and we'll stop attacking you.
That's right, and of course it's not going to happen. But remember the big picture here is that war is the only thing that's really going to give us a new world currency. There is no mechanism to voluntarily replace with a basket currency or anything else. I've explained that in my World Affairs brief. You can't have an EU type of agreement between the basket of currencies to inflate at a uniform rate. The dollar people will not agree to it. The Chinese will not agree to it. There isn't any currency that anyone will agree to at a fixed rate of inflation because everybody needs to be secretly inflating. That's the only game in town, and they can stretch this out, believe it or not, for another 8 to 10 years, I believe.
All right, Joel, stay there. We're going to come back with 5 more minutes with you. Wish we had more time. And Webster Tarpley's coming up, and we'll take some calls then. WorldAffairsBrief.com is Joel's website. We're going to be broadcasting for 27 hours straight with Joel Skousen that we're not going to see the new cashless world currency next month or next year. The point is they're moving into these SDRs. They're getting the governments under one authority. The European Union is collapsing more of the sovereignty of the nations into its own system. And they admit it's undemocratic. But the Greeks, boy, it's confusing what's going on over there. First, they're going to have a referendum, then they aren't, then they are, then they aren't, now they are. They're talking about firing their military. Joel, just briefly from your research, what's going on in Greece right now?
Well, Prime Minister Papandreou is the son of the former communist Greek Prime Minister Papandreou, but he still has to play to the left. But he is a globalist, and he was in a political pincer, because of the globalists wanting no referendum and his own coalition saying, look, we've got to take the heat off of us or we're going to lose this election. And so they wanted the referendum, in essence, to put the blame on the people, so that when they rejected the Greek thing, it would be the people. But the breaking news was just this last hour while we were talking, Papandreou finally acceded to the globalist demands and called off the referendum, and that looks permanent now.
Unbelievable. What do you think about this new, quote, economic union where the countries are, quote, never allowed to leave? I mean, that's financial dictatorship.
Yeah, that's the new Soviet version of the European Union, of which, the Socialist International, which is a Moscow front, has been, and is very much a part of the European Union, has been pushing for this Sovietized version, whereby, we can't let people run off and just leave their obligations and leave us standing. And this will happen, of course, if they get an EU-wide bonding system whereby all the nations are on the hook for these bonds, and that's what they're trying to do. Once again, they use the deeper the crisis. People like Zero Hedge keep saying the European Union is about to fall apart. The Eurosceptics in Britain, who are having a heyday right now watching this crisis.
No, they're only using this to get more power. They always, like the banker bailout here, it's all staged. They admit it is.
Exactly. And that's exactly what's happening. The EU G20 meeting going on right now, there's a lot of arms being twisted. They're looking at Greece, and that's, I think there were some behind-the-scenes stuff going on at the G20 meeting that turned Papandreou around. But we're going to see Greece stay in there. We're going to see, and they've got to do this to save Italy. Italy is very nearing the basket case that Greece is in, and it's 5 times larger than Greece. This is a major problem. So they don't want a domino effect going on. And right now, I think they're moving towards convincing a lot more Eurosceptics to join and giving the EU much greater power to control finances.
Joel, we've got Webster Tarpley coming up, who's been in Libya. We're going to get his take on what happened in Libya. We're going to get his take on the economy and more. We're doing a 27-hour transmission here. But if you can, when we go to break, I want to hold you just 2 or 3 minutes on the other side and get your view on election 2012, the different candidates.
Yes, I've got a good information on that.
We got about a minute and a half now. Go ahead and start.
Well, it's been amazing to see the manipulation of the Republican nomination process. It's even worse than 2008 when Rudolph Giuliani, a cross-dressing, non-conservative person, was tried to foist it on the people. He wasn't hacking the polls, even though they were claiming he had 30% support. They pulled him out of the first 2 primaries so that they wouldn't document his low rating, and resurrected John McCain with 6 newspaper endorsements. Now the problem is that Romney got a head start in 2008. They brought out Huckabee to kill Romney's chances with the fundamentalist Christians. Huckabee wasn't in for it this time, and so they brought in Herman Cain to do that, to pull off the Christian vote and to bring up the Mormon versus evangelical arguments all over again. They tried to resurrect Rick Perry, who's a globalist masquerading as a conservative. And all of these things are failing. So what they're faced now, especially with Herman Cain going into a nosedive over his Anita Hill problems, like Clarence Thomas. And so now they're having to control Romney. It looks like they're going to be able to do that, and I can cover that after the break.
Yeah, let's break down your view on that, and then we'll get Webster Tarpley up right after that. Stay with us. We'll be right back. InfoWarsMoneybomb.com. Well, I always enjoy talking to Joel Skousen. Webster Tarpley's coming up here in about 5 minutes. So much is happening. I mean, this is an incredible time we're living through. World governments being unveiled publicly. The Vatican's calling for the Bank of the World, global currency. The point is, all those people that called us kooks and things, who's laughing now? And just like I told you 2.5 weeks ago, I said, the word is I've got within 2 weeks, and then out from that point, there could be an attack. Briefly, before we get back into politics, because I know you spoke to this, but specifically with any of your sources, I know you have a lot of them, Joel. I've been told any time from 3 or 4 days ago up until the middle of December, that's the window to strike because the U.S. troops have to leave in December. That's what I've been told by the military sources, multiple, just what you said. They're also looking at Kuwait as a command base to launch U.S. attacks, aircraft, including helicopters flying around over the ocean, shooting up their patrol boats. And what's the time frame on a Israeli then backed up by a U.S. strike on Iran?
Well, my military sources indicate that indeed they are transferring assets right now to Kuwait, and there's a steady stream of shipments going into Israel. That means they're beefing up their supplies of military hardware for this attack. I can't say, and I don't know of any of my military sources know that when the date's coming, because I think it's still in flux. They're still trying to wait for a political justification or a public propaganda justification. Short of that, though, it's going to happen before January.
Yeah. Why do you think, when the U.S. is forced to leave Iraq, why do you think they're doing an emergency EAS takeover drill for the first time in history? Because I work in radio. This is the first time where the government takes over the radio and TV. That system's been in place since '96. The overall system since the '50s. Part of, obviously, nuclear attack civil defense system. But now they're even talking about cell phones in the future will be taken over by the government. Telescreens everywhere. But November 9th, they're doing a FEMA, FCC, martial law takeover drill. And I've learned they're also going to have nationwide TSA checkpoints on the same day. This is clearly an internal defense martial law drill, Joel. Well,
I would be careful not to make too much of this one coming November 9th. They're not going to do that much that quick. I think what they're doing, the major change is they're intervening in daytime, in the afternoon, which is going to impact television. They're going to get up front and noticed by people, but they won't take it to any extremes. I think this is an incremental step up of just what you're talking about, but it's not going to happen this time. It's going to get in your face. People are getting used to the inconvenience, but it's further down the line when this other stuff gets really big. But you're right. This is the track that they're heading on. But let's not make too much out of the ninth one. I think we'll disappoint people like Y2K.
No, I agree with you. They're beta testing it, just like they're now going to have PSAs on hotel TV saying, look for terrorists.
Right.
It's just all part of this Stasi society that, I mean, if Americans, Joel, could see this, get in a time machine from 50 years ago and come to this time, what would they think? I mean, this is classic authoritarianism being set up.
They'd be in rebellion if they saw it now, but gradually they get to accept it. That's the only reason that it can explain why the TSA continues to needle people at the airports, which violates their basic principle, but don't bother people lest they rebel against you. But they're determined to get people used to this kind of needling, used to this kind of interference. And that's why we're going to get more of it on television. But it's going to be incremental. And if they get too much resistance, they'll back off a little bit, just like TSA always pretends to back off, like they did when they said they won't going to shake down children anymore. And then they went back to it again.
That's right. It's all military tactics. And people say, well, at least America's America. We're run by global banks, folks. So, again, people either say Russia's good or we're bad, or we're good, Russia's bad. No, it's all crook run, as Joel's pointed out. It's just different factions of crooks, but they all use the same systems, all use the latest developments in manipulation. Now, in 2 minutes, Joel, you were breaking down your view of how they are playing the candidates off against each other to suppress Ron Paul. Finish up your point about Mitt Romney.
Well, the point is that Mitt Romney have tried for years, anybody but Mitt Romney, but he's continued to stay there despite bringing up, John Huntsman, Chris Christie, Herman Cain. He's outlasted them all. And what that does, it puts Ron Paul in second place. They don't want him in second place. They don't want to have a convention battle with Ron Paul. They still have enough time to bring out another candidate, may try to resurrect Huntsman again. But ultimately, they are preparing big time to control him. Romney is not a globalist. He's trying, bending over backwards to be one, but because he hasn't bought into the system in terms of compromise and moral indiscretions with his wife, things they can use to twist arms, they are afraid that he's going to see something in the White House, and he's smart. He may well see it, and they may have to control him like they did Ronald Reagan with an assassination attempt. So they've surrounded him with globalist advisors, with neocons. Michael Chertoff, of all people, he's the Darth Vader of the TSA crowd. I mean, how could a man be that stupid to take on Michael Chertoff as a major advisor?
Well, look at Herman Cain, the former head of the Federal Reserve in Kansas City. You've got Herman Cain trying to introduce new taxing systems on top of the income tax. And then you've got, like you said, Mitt Romney, all these advisors where carbon taxes, Al Gore praising him. And then you've got Rick Perry, all the same stuff coming out of him. And now we learn it's reportedly Rahm Emanuel leaking the stuff on Cain. It's just an amazing free-for-all. Joel Skousen of worldaffairsbrief.com, the editor-in-chief over there. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
My pleasure, Alex, and good luck on your show today.
If you just joined us, we're doing a 27-hour transmission. We're 2 hours and 15 minutes into this one, and there's free audio and video streams. There's always free audio streams, but free video streams at InfowarsMoneybomb.com, or just go to Infowars.com. You can't miss them. PrisonPlanet.tv. We've got them everywhere. We've been streaming the nightly news since it was live last night through to this morning. We'll be doing nightly news tonight or tomorrow. Because we're gonna be basically live at those times. But just so much going on here. If you just joined us, I would encourage everybody to go up to Infowars.com and to InfowarsMoneybomb.com and go into the press release section area, and you can see the schedule. Of course, we had Dave Mustaine and Jesse Ventura on, 2 powerful interviews yesterday, but today, Joel Skousen, Webster Tarpley, Katherine Albrecht, George Noory, David Icke, Mike Adams, Robert Scott Bell, Tex Mars, Mr. Corbett, the Corbett Report, Mr. Jim Mars, Fritz Springmeier, Aaron Dykes, Watson, Paul Watson, Richard Reeves, Alan Watt, Jim Mars, Bob Chapman. And yes, we're either going to premiere an incredible interview up in Anchorage, Alaska. We did. It's never before been seen with the individual who's, of course, exposed so much of the HARP system and more, and that's Dr. Nick Begich. Or we're going to premiere, and I think it's going to be the Skull and Bones side. You know, you saw part one, Charlotte Iserby on education. Her dad was Skull and Bones, and other family as well. But the point is, Skull and Bones, and she was high-level government, and she showed us stuff never before seen on Skull and Bones. And we're looking to premiere that coming up as well. That is set to happen tomorrow morning. What time is that set to happen? 7 a.m. Who knows, though? I might air it in the middle of the night when Aaron's on as well. It's just so powerful. And then, of course, it'll be archived then. I've noticed we've been putting the special reports in the nightly news section. So that's got all the reports and special reports. We're going to start moving those over to the special report section, which hasn't been updated in a month. That's just an oversight. And I'm going to be putting some things in the rant section as well over at prisonplanet.tv. Now, this is the 4th annual Infowars Moneybomb. You give money to United Way, they give a bunch of it to gun control groups. If you give money to NPR, they use it to sell, you know, anti-gun, anti-family garbage to the public. We have sponsors, we have video sales, stuff like that, but to do capital improvements, to hire more people and guarantee their jobs and to buy the very expensive equipment. I mean, I got to buy equipment that costs what houses cost. You know, bandwidth, cost every month. I could live in a 60-bedroom mansion. I mean, we spend a lot of money around here on the bandwidth, on everything. We have a lot of cost, and we're giving the globalists a run for their money. And you can see the fruits of it, how fast we're growing, the people we've reached. But as the country goes into depression, our audience goes straight up, but our funding basically planes out. And so it is the money bombs that helps push us over the edge to be able to grow. InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com, InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. A lot of the hours also, we're going to have open hours for phones and people view on the world and other news and your calls on the Money Bomb. We've got also at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com down at the bottom a link to our eBay store with a lot of Tyranny Crusher 2 bullhorn, a sledgehammer I used to break open the wall to the next side of the office. And it was used to actually tear open the hole to the other side. People are like, you're bashing out a wall that's an internal wall. Well, yeah, we started tearing that out first because I didn't want to mess up the electrical equipment in the wall. But point is, we got a video of that. We did build the studio over there is the point. And so there's that sledgehammer. It's available. I'm going to do some pen and inks that are one-time only and some acrylic paintings. It'll be more impressionistic probably because I can do those and kind of turn my brain off and even do better paintings when I just relax. If I do technical things, it takes me time. I won't have time. But tonight I'm going to do some of those. They're going to videotape that. Then we'll put those up for auction as well tomorrow for the Money Bomb. The Money Bomb will go right through into the weekend. We need to raise that $500,000 right now. We're going to go to break and come back for the balance of the hour with Webster Griffin Tarpley of Tarpley.net to get his view on Libya, his view on the Iran strike, his view on all of it. It was Tarpley back in 2007 said the Iran strike is on, and we later learned Cheney did have it on until Fox, Fallon, and others resigned, and it didn't happen. But we're right back to that point again, as I told you 2.5 weeks ago, and now it's admitted Israel's getting ready to strike. Can it be stopped? We'll get Tarpley's take on that. What will the ramifications of this new war be? The accelerating police state rollout and more. But whatever you do, get that URL and send it out to everybody to be part of this special 27-hour transmission. Infowars Money Bomb. All of you who spread the word about the broadcast. I want to thank all of you who've been demonized and laughed at and told you're a liar when you warned folks about global government. Now it's all being announced because you cared about the truth more than being trendy. And you cared about free humanity. I told you NATO in September to early October was going to launch a ground offensive backing rebels. It happened. I told you they're getting ready for Iran 2.5 weeks ago. Now they're admitting it. We know what we're talking about. This is a treasure. This show, our guest. I take you now to Webster Griffin Tarpley, joining us via video Skype until 5 minutes into the next hour when Katherine Albrecht joins us. Webster, great to have you here.
Thank you, Alex. How you doing?
Good. Give us your analysis on the Iran situation. Is it moving into green light phase?
Well, it may be. We know that the Anglo-Americans, the imperialists, are appalled that their attack on Syria has broken down. It's going nowhere. Their design for this autumn was to have Libya go down, and they've succeeded maybe partially there, but not completely by any means. And now there's the question of Syria, and we know that this is difficult nut to crack for them, because you've got this Russian naval base there at the port of Tartus, and you've got Iran next door, and you've got Hezbollah next door. So the goal is to smash the government of President Assad of Syria using a group of really contemptible NATO puppets. They are the Muslim Brotherhood. They are death squads. They are openly calling. They're having demonstrations in the cities of Syria, to the extent they can get anybody at all on the street, calling for NATO to rain down death and destruction on their own country. Can you imagine a demonstration that says, please, NATO, bomb us. Bomb us now.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'd be like Americans in the streets going, Russia, please bomb America.
It's unbelievable. And basically they're saying, we want civil war, we want NATO bombing, because that's what you get. As Secretary Gates said in a rare moment of candor before he left, the beginning of a no-fly zone is a comprehensive aerial bombardment with thousands and thousands of sorties of the country involved. So this is now the problem. The Anglo-Americans, again, we're talking Obama, Hillary, Panetta. Remember, this country is now being run by the Principals Committee. Panetta, Hillary, General Petraeus.
Be respectful. That's President Obama, Nobel laureate for peace.
But again, the Principals Committee is where the stuff is really happening. Obama, by most accounts, is out of it. He gets his adulation when and where he can, and otherwise he retreats to the family living quarters of the White House and focuses on whatever sports event is on or insulting people in his entourage. The question, therefore, is Panetta, Hillary, General Petraeus, whom I regard as the dominant personality of this clique, along with Donilon, the head of the National Security Council, along with a couple of others, they're running the government. That's the Principals Committee. Now, what will they do? If you attack Syria, Syria has said they will retaliate directly against Israel. And they have very serious means of doing this now. They have heavy-duty, conventionally armed ballistic missiles, at least thought to be conventionally armed. Maybe there's more that would show up on these missiles, and Iran would immediately, therefore, be involved. So this gets to look much more like World War III than the Libyan adventure that we've just seen. Although the Libyan adventure was a stepping stone, the problem for the Anglo-Americans is that they wanted to take Gaddafi out back in March, April, May. They failed. And Gaddafi, with his blocking position, has basically saved everybody else, Algeria and Syria in particular. So this is now the situation. Now, I would say this ruling class, this imperialist ruling elite that we have, are mad as hatters. They're about as crazy can be. They're crazed precisely because their derivatives castle is coming down, right? This huge, monstrous edifice of quadrillions of dollars worth of derivatives. And they're also, I think, aware that their hold on power is now a little bit less firm than it had been before. In particular, I think we have to look at the mass strike. What the experience of recent years shows is that you cannot really organize a movement that can contend for power on the basis of anti-war issues only. You've also got to have economic issues. Now, let me just pull back from the Eastern...
All right, stay there, but I want to go around the world. You've been to Libya recently. I want to look at that what happened there. I want to look at Iran coming up and what will follow that. I want to look then at the economy, what's happening in Greece, what's happening in Europe with Dr. Tarpley, Doctor of History. He's also an economist. I'm Alex Jones, InfowarsMoneyBomb.com, or donate at Infowars.com if you can't get on the Moneybomb website. Stay with us. To Webster Griffin Tarpley. Webster, looking at all this, again, I'm asking you to make the call. We now learn you were right in 2007 when you said it's been green-lighted the next month. But we now know the green light was taken off. Cheney was countermanded. So was certain elements in Israel. Now you got Netanyahu before the cabinet. You got the media, that hoax 2.5 weeks ago of the Iranian used car salesman in Corpus Christi, Texas. Turned out totally fake, run by Iranian opposition group funded by the CIA. And we saw all these top analysts come out and say it was fake, showing there is some type of power structure struggle going on. Is that enough to derail this? I know they're massing the forces now. I mean, I understand you've got an idea for a movement where Occupy Wall Street is not co-opted. Clearly, they tried to co-opt it, but now they're attacking them nationwide, so that means they were not co-opted fully. And I want your view on that. I know you want to talk about solutions and your particular view on the American system, but I want your political analysis. Do you believe they're about to hit Iran?
Well, the problem with attacking Iran right now that makes it more complicated than it might have been 6 months ago or 8 months ago is that Putin is back. And I think if you go back to 2007, the incident that you're referring to, right? Cheney had been demanding an attack on Syria starting in June. I made this public based really just on analysis, no inside sources, just the pattern of events. By July, I was putting out this newspaper article, Cheney determined to strike in U.S., and then we had the rogue B-52 at the end of August and the beginning of September, which was an attempt by Cheney and the group that he speaks for to hijack a B-52 with 6 nuclear cruise missiles on board, fly that to the Middle East outside of the command and control of the United States, but in the command and control of the Wall Street invisible government and start a war. So what stopped that? When that B-52 reached the Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana was the concern, I think, about Putin. How would Russia respond? What would they do? Not likely they're going to start World War III, but they would respond in some way that could be very, very painful and uncomfortable for the Anglo-Americans. So this is now a factor. But now we have a new factor. Let's look at the port of Oakland. I believe it's the 5th largest port in the United States. That was shut down yesterday by people who were fighting Wall Street. Now, whatever the particular program is or was not, I recommend a program. The general idea is we don't like the banks, we don't like Wall Street, and this is already a big step forward because, indeed, finance capital is everybody's public enemy number one. Wall Street is the enemy. So if the port of Oakland is shut down, even for a few hours, suppose other ports were shut down. What does that mean when the ruling class says, are we going to mount a large military operation in the Eastern Mediterranean in the face of a movement that has now shown that it can shut down a port? There are plenty of historical examples for this. Mass strikes can stop foreign wars. You could say the attempt of the Allies after World War I to invade Soviet Russia was stopped by revolutionary ferment, mass strikes with working class demands in countries of Europe and also to some extent in the United States. But now, therefore, we have to see what will Putin say? Will there be some kind of a move by Russia? There's already been the joint Russian-Chinese veto of the U.S.-British attempt to get the attack on Syria approved in some form in the UN Security Council. But that is obviously not enough. The hysteria of the Anglo-Americans is even greater. Now, I have to pull back a little bit and move to another part of the Mediterranean. Now, we got to talk about Greece for a minute. And we've got to talk about Cannes, right? We've got to talk about the G20, right? The heads of every top 20 country in the world are now meeting on the French Riviera, right, the Côte d'Azur. So what's going on here? I think this is really interesting, what's happened in the last couple of days there. And it allows us to see what might be coming inside the United States. Greece, of course, is in financial trouble because it's being attacked by zombie bankers and hedge fund hyenas using credit default swaps and other means, with the help of the ratings agencies, which have to be regarded as an arm of intelligence. In other words, they're an arm of the intelligence community, and what they do is strategically targeted. They're also very corrupt. They do insider trading and all the rest of it. So Greece is in trouble. It is a somewhat artificial crisis, although probably the Greek debt is somewhat larger than it needs to be. But it doesn't need to be this kind of a life and death crisis. Papandreou is the socialist prime minister of Greece, and he's been running this crisis the whole time. He's an agent of the International Monetary Fund. He represents the London and New York and other banks. It is impossible to run class defense when you've got an IMF agent sitting at the top of the so-called progressive coalition. That's what the Greeks actually have. So the Greek labor movement has been wonderful. They've come up with a dozen or maybe 15 general strikes, but they haven't been able to even get Papandreou out, partly because of this stuff. Anarchists have come in and said, no, we want to have general assemblies and facilitators and all the rest of this.
Well, let me stop you there, Webster. Webster Tarpley joining us. I mean, let's look at this here. What's going on with Papandreou saying we're going to have a referendum or not? We are, we aren't, now we aren't. And we know he's a globalist.
Well,
we know he's Goldman Sachs handled. We know that Greece supposedly owes $100 billion, but they need 1.4 trillion, leveraged 3 times, almost to $5 trillion. We know this is all a giant stinking fraud. And then you've got the Vatican saying we need to punish those bankers with a new Bank of the World and giving the bankers more power. And
let's be granular, okay? Let's get into the details on that, because the idea of taxing Wall Street is the obvious thing to do. The question is who gets the money. Now, there's a Delphic version of it.
By the way, they then call that collectivism, but we're all paying tens of trillions in banker bailouts that's stolen. You're saying actually claw back the money from these offshore crooks. And then they say, no, that's not free market. And Rush Limbaugh says what is free market is giving all your money in banker bailout to them.
The big issue going into this G20 in Cannes was that everybody in Europe, France, Germany, the European Commission, the Pope, you name it, as well as the whole trade union movement, they're demanding a tax on speculation, on speculative turnovers. Now, naturally, since these people are bad, they have a version of this which is not quite the right one. Nevertheless, the idea of bringing this forward is letting a powerful genie out of the bottle, and you can tell that the controlled media, the so-called mainstream media in the United States, never talk about the demand for the Tobin tax, the Wall Street sales tax, the Robin Hood tax, I guess some people call it, not a good term for it, the financial transaction tax. The point is, you put a 1% tax on Wall Street turnover, which is in the quadrillions, and you get trillions of dollars for the public till. That means you don't need genocidal budget cuts. You don't need to kill your own people in the name of a balanced budget that you're not going to get to anyway. But now the news of the past 6 hours or so, Papandreou had said, since my government is about to collapse, I'm going to call for a referendum. I'm going to let the Greeks vote on this. And this was a blackmail referendum, because it basically says either you embrace genocidal austerity and years of suffering and grinding poverty and want and misery for the sake of the zombie bankers in Germany and France and Britain and Wall Street, or you're going to be cast into the outer darkness, right? You're going to be kicked out of the euro. You're going to be kicked out of the European Union. And with your drachma will go to zero, and your living standard will also go to zero, because that's what happens. Leaving a currency like this is catastrophic. Now, it's clear now, this was a maneuver by Papandreou, the IMF agent. Today, he makes a speech in the Greek parliament saying, I don't need to have a referendum as long as I can get the Greek right-wing opposition to agree with me in a national unity government. Now,
so let me stop you. What you're saying here is the banksters didn't want Greece to default until the euro deal had gone through to give the banksters $5 trillion and more power over the states. Now that they've done that, now they do want to have it default to create even more carnage. No, I wouldn't put it that way. They're trying to stave off default by, as you say, this whole idea of the European Financial Stability Fund. It's about 500 trillion, and 500 billion, and they want to use derivatives. They want to use credit default swaps and other derivatives. In other words, the cause of the crisis. They want to use that to increase the firepower, as they say, of the EFSF, European Financial Stability Fund. This is all crazy. It's physically impossible for the Greeks to pay that debt. No, exactly, Webster. It's physically impossible, and we've covered all this ground before. But wait. The new thing, this is what's coming at you, right? Coming at all of us right now is this model where Papandreou says to the head of the New Democracy Party, who are the reactionaries, right? They're like the Republicans. This is a party that has been sitting on the sidelines and sniping, right? Sort of what the Republicans do in Congress. Now, Papandreou turns to this guy, Samaras, and says to him, join me in a national unity government. It's going to be the PASOK, the socialists, and the reactionaries together. Now, what would that mean here in the U.S.? It would mean a national unity government of Obama and the Republicans. And where would that occur? Where could that take shape? The 12 tyrants. This is the thing. The 12 tyrants are going on behind the scenes, right? I'm talking about the Congressional Super Committee created by this rotten, despicable compromise that both parties agreed to after
the debt crisis, right, at the end of July, beginning of August, with the threat by the reactionaries to drive the country into bankruptcy. One of the results of that was to create this group of 12 members of Congress, right, 6 Republican hacks, 6 Democratic hacks, right, 6 reactionary Republicans and 6 Wall Street Democrats, and they're now working behind the scenes. The chairs are Patty Murray of Washington State, Wall Street Democrat, and Henserling, congressman from Texas, reactionary Republican. Now, if you look at the model that's being launched for Greece of the national unity government to push genocidal austerity, to ram genocidal austerity down the throats of people, the form in which this would occur here in the United States is on November 23rd, the 12 tyrants, the super committee, come forward with their solution, and they say, well, we were supposed to come up with 1.2 trillion of genocidal budget cuts against the American people, but that's not enough. We're going to have 4 trillion, 5 trillion of genocidal budget cuts so that we can please Standard & Poor's and Moody's and Fitch. And that would then be the precursor for some kind of a rotten deal along these lines. Now,
but Webster, Webster, we need to quantify this for new listeners. The point is, you can't pay back the 1,500 plus trillion in garbage that criminal government has signed us onto that isn't our debts.
Well, that zombie banks have created. Zombie banks.
Yeah.
Thanks to deregulation. What the government did was to deregulate it. Because, again, from 1936 to 1982, derivatives were strictly illegal. And they should stay illegal.
Yes, but then expanding on that, the bipartisan crooks that did this, bought and paid for by these criminal elements in Wall Street, they've now done this, and now they've got the super Congress, and you notice they're slashing all the infrastructure, but then raising taxes to pay it to them, and the destination is the journey. They mean to impoverish us in the post-industrial eugenics religion that they publicly follow, the tropism, as you've called it, the suicide bankers, who are just destroying the system in the name of total power. So the question is, expanding on this, why do they want the war now? To make it a political diversion? I mean, what do you make of this? I have to keep going back to this Iran thing, because that's the big immediate deal that'll be the patriotic diversion while we're in a new big war, while the bankers can, rob us blind while we're busy watching this. The Israeli prime minister has ordered an investigation into Iran leak. Kuwait paper says Benjamin Netanyahu believes the heads of the Mossad and Shin Bet may have leaked plans for an attack. Skousen saying that's all just part of theater to act like all of Israel isn't involved in this so they can flush Netanyahu if they, if this goes bad. But Netanyahu's gone is basically saying they're getting ready to hit. So my question is, why do they want this war now?
Well, whether they want it 100% beyond the theater, I think, is still a bit of an open question. And again, it's harder for them to do it because we got rid of at least we're on the way to getting rid of the weak, lame duck Medvedev. And indeed, part of this whole scenario may be to prevent Putin from making the full comeback that they also hate and fear. But here's the idea. If you have such a war with Iran, the response of Iran is to close the Straits of Hormuz, right? Cutting off oil. That oil, if it's cut off, destroys who? It destroys Europe, Japan, and above all, China. And it drives up the price of the dollar. It creates a huge increase in the price of oil. And since the dollar is still a reserve currency, this means that you have a tremendous artificial demand for dollars. And they say, well, if we have a nice little war in the Persian Gulf, then the Iranians will do us the favor of cutting off the tanker traffic. That will mean the price of oil goes to $500 or $1,000 a barrel. And at that point, the dollar overhang is absorbed out of the liquidity that's sloshing around.
No, all roads lead to war. It's the health of the state, as they say. This is what these type of crooks always do. I mean, so do you believe it's imminent, or are you saying it's not?
To coin a phrase, turn the imperialist foreign war into a revolutionary civil conflict, let's say, to a revolutionary social movement at home, to embroider a previously existing phrase. In other words, the answer to all this, if you want to build mass resistance to this, you've got to do it with demands that have actual mass traction. And that's where you get the Wall Street sales tax of 1% means no cuts, no to the recipes coming from the 12 tyrants.
All right, stay there. Back to Webster Tarpley. You know, Webster, I've studied what the communist Chinese do. I don't know why the left loves them so much. They execute homosexuals over there. I saw some person dressed up in a Mao outfit at an Occupy Wall Street deal saying he loves Mao because he's gay and America doesn't like him. And they go over there, they'd murder him. I'm not talking about the general Chinese people, but the government. You've got Russia, incredibly corrupt. I mean, I don't romanticize any of this. You've got the corrupt banks running us. It's just all a bunch of crooks fighting with each other while we, the people, are on the bottom of it. You've got the Iranians that have had their government overthrown over and over again. You've got all this stuff happening. I agree the Western elite is in crisis, but so are the others, Webster. And I just see this going from bad to worse. What's your comment on that?
Let's look at the tactical strategic situation. We have the bad, right? The bad would be Sarkozy, Merkel, and this crew with lots and lots of others attached to them. And then we have the worst. And the worst are Obama, Hillary, Geithner, Bernanke. We've got Cameron in London. We've got Osborne, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Those guys are the worst because they represent the most virulent, destructive form of speculative finance capital the world has ever seen, right? The derivative center, London. I was on TV yesterday with a guy who said, London is the center, the premier financial center of the world. And they mean to keep that, okay? And the world be damned. So when you see the bad fighting the worst, it's something good, first of all, because it diminishes the net amount of evil in the world. But at that point, it's better to see the bad win out over the worst. And specifically, the fight is about this Wall Street sales tax.
Stay there. 5 more minutes, Webster. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Katherine Albrecht is going to be joining us. She's an expert on the Big Brother takeover to society. I want to cover the waterfront with her joining us. And then we've got Mike Adams coming up, David Icke, George Noory, Tex Mars, Alfred Adask. I mean, the list just goes on with this 27-hour marathon worldwide transmission. The websites are prisonplanet.tv and Infowars.com. Finishing up with Webster. Webster, yes, I understand the tax on Wall Street, but see, that's a general thing. When I go down to these Wall Street events, they tell me, get your Ron Paul signs out of here. This is freedom, and we love George Soros, and we're going to tax anybody making $100,000 or more. I understand some of the groups are saying a speculation tax.
Those guys are on the Soros payroll. Look, I would suggest people to do 3 things. Let's highlight one election next week, right? Election day next Tuesday. City of Philadelphia, County of Philadelphia, Sheriff Sherry Hunkala running for Sheriff of Philadelphia. What's the problem she sees? Bank of America steals people's homes. They have robo-judges, robo-cops, robo-signers, robo-sheriffs. They come and steal your home. Maybe you have no mortgage. Maybe you missed one payment. They're there to steal it, right? Private property at risk from the attacks of Bank of America. So Sherry Hunkala is running for Sheriff of Philadelphia. Her platform is no foreclosures, no evictions.
No, I love it. That's solutions. When banks break the law, grand jury should indict them and they should go to prison. Right. And they should have the tens of trillions they've stolen clawed back and paid back into the Treasury. I totally agree with you. That's a real solution. Arrest the bankers.
All right, but this is also don't carry out their orders to steal people's homes and throw American families out on the streets. This is a lady who has been homeless herself. She's a long-term activist. So I urge people to support Sherry Hunkala for Sheriff of Philadelphia. She needs money. She needs volunteers.
I'm saying that general idea, Webster, of getting good sheriffs in. Sheriff Mack has, of course, pioneered that idea. That's a great idea.
Okay, and number 2, if you're in Ohio, vote against Kasich. Kasich wants to bust all the unions. If you bust all the unions, for God's sake, then there are no mass organizations that can resist totalitarian government. What kind of a logic is it that says smash the unions and then everything will be hunky-dory? Those are the only things that come even close to being mass organizations that could call a general strike to stop a war, to stop a fascist coup, or God knows what. And the third thing, if you're a Democrat in particular or an independent, and you're interested in the Obama question, right? If you want to register your opposition to Obama, that he should be dumped as a failure in a Wall Street puppet, primaryobamanow.com, primaryobamanow.com. So I think among those three things, just about there's something for everybody that they can do, right? Because the big thing is action. And again, if you don't like the fact that Soros's facilitators are dominating the Occupy where you are, get out there with the program. Wall Street sales tax, stop foreclosures, student loan amnesty, cancel it all, no cuts, no to the 12 tyrants, and seize the Federal Reserve. Let's start laying a glove on the Federal Reserve. Nationalize them. Make them cough up $1 trillion of 0% 100-year credit. We can rebuild the United States with successive blocks of those trillions. We need to create 30 million new productive jobs at union wages. And we're sick of austerity because the austerity goes to the bankers, right? We don't want genocide against the American people. The budget will never be balanced with those methods, right? The champion of austerity is Papandreou. The more he cuts, the bigger the deficit gets. How many people do we have to kill before that becomes obvious, right? Schwarzenegger, the same story. And remember, today is the day called by the National Nurses United and other groups. Get out there and fight for the Wall Street sales tax, whatever you want to call it. The main thing is it goes to the U.S. Treasury and it goes to the states so that the states can maintain vital services. We don't need to have cops, teachers, healthcare workers, first responders fired simply because Koch and Soros want their bailouts.
All right, Webster, thanks for spending time with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Katherine Albrecht.
Best of luck, Alex.
Thank you, Webster. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Infowars hosting with us this hour is Katherine Albrecht, Dr. Katherine Albrecht. Our website's katherinealbrecht.com. She's a popular commentator and, of course, radio personality here on Genesis. She's authored and co-authored 6 books and films. And, of course, she's also a Harvard graduate studying all of this garbage. She's helped really expose the whole RFID system, the police state control grid. My only problem today is really getting into the full magnitude of just open flaunting of classical Big Brother corruption and tyranny in this country. It really is staggering to behold it. All over the nation, I've known for 13 years, they've put up street lights that have cameras and microphones hidden in them. For 17 years, they've listened to all the cell phones in real time and tracked everywhere you go. For 40 years, it'll be 40 years next year, worldwide, in industrialized nations, they've taken blood at birth and put it in a secret UN database. We, of course, broke that 16 years ago with the documents. Now it's news the last 3. RFID, tracker chips, smart dust, Google watching people over microphones and cameras on phones, schools watching children, telescreens everywhere saying spy on your neighbors, only trust the government. It's like waking up in a nightmare science fiction movie is the way I've described it. And now they've gone from denying they were spying on us without warrants to just saying this is the way it is. And Katherine Albrecht has a great way, with words to really break down how you're not just going to Google and getting something from them. They're finding out who you are, what you're doing. They're creating algorithms on you. They're integrating it with larger systems to literally be able to predict the future. All of that is going on. And that's why the elite are on such power trips. They admit now they see it as a type of crystal ball system to control the population. I also saw a report yesterday. Richard Reeves brought it to me. I was going to cover it on the nightly news, and then it disappeared out of my stack. But he had reports that they're actually talking about pulling the smart meters in California because they use wireless cell phone technology type systems because of the health effects. California's been forced, along with a lot of Europe, to admit that they're causing problems, and cell phones are linked to cancer. Also, we'll get into just a lot of other technological developments that have taken place. And towards the end of the hour, we'll open the phones up. We're going to have some sections over the next 24 hours we've got left in the 27-hour transmission where we are going to just have nothing but phones that are open. But going to Katherine Albrecht, she's also fighting and praise God, hopefully winning a fight against breast cancer right now. So she might give us an update on that today as well. Katherine, good to have you here with us today.
Well, hey, Alex, it's terrific to be on with you. I can't believe you're doing 27 hours. I think it's fantastic. You could probably do 100 hours and keep going. You're like the Energizer Bunny out there, and I love it because there's just so much we got to be covering. You know, I'm out here in New Hampshire where we got hit by this October, what they're calling the Great Halloween Power Outage, this big storm we got. I'm on day 6 of no power. And the reason I bring that up, I'm actually broadcasting not out of my studio. I had to actually find somebody with power and get an opportunity to get online and connect to you this way. But there's a couple of things about this power outage I want to bring to people's attention, that when the powers that be choose to shut off our power, and I'm not implying that's what happened up here because we got down trees across our power lines, but if someone at some point says, hey, you know what, we're going to turn off your internet, we're going to turn off your power, we are going to be helpless. It is amazing to me watching what happened when we had about 2/3 of the state of New Hampshire and virtually all of New England without power, how everybody goes crazy. And, you know, even those generators, people say, oh, you get prepared to get a generator. The lines at our gas stations are stretching a half a mile. People were saying it was taking 45 minutes to an hour just to get gasoline because everybody's got to refill. I mean, those generators are taking 10, 15 gallons of gas a day. And if they shut that off, people are going to be in the dark. They're going to be cold. And let me tell you, more importantly, they're not going to have access to the internet. And that's been the hardest part for me. I've got kerosene, I've got heat, I got water, I got all the stuff I need, but boy, I'll tell you, when you are out of communication range and you cannot use that internet, it is mind-blowing what they can do. And then you take a look at the smart meters. You mentioned that at the opening of the show, which is such an important topic, because the smart meters are about more than just making it easier for the power company to read your electric meter and send you a bill. The smart meters have an incredible amount of power to selectively shut off appliances in your home, to communicate with and have your appliances communicate back with the power company and say, hey, she ate 3 pieces of toast today instead of 1. What's going on? Does she have a visitor over? I mean, that level of invasiveness. And now we just had a news story come out telling us that the smart meter can even determine what show you're watching on TV or what DVD, that they actually monitor the amount of power that goes through your television to make light and dark images, and on the basis of that, they could run an algorithm and say exactly what TV show or movie you're watching. Unbelievable, and that's all coming. So, you know, when the power goes out, you start really thinking about that grid.
Well, first they came out with smart meters 5-6 years ago and said, don't worry, we won't control your thermostat. Now they admit they're going to be doing it. And then they're also coming out with, as you know, data transmission down power lines. And they're now building circuits in different appliances where that data transmission over power line couples in and spies on what you're doing. They're coming out, and government buildings are testing it, of course, a flicker rate with fluorescent light bulbs that communicates with your computer. That's Associated Press. But let's get into the free speech issues first. Now we've seen David Cameron come out and say we're going to have to restrict free speech. We've seen the bill introduced, even CNET News, as you know, on Monday admitted, and they have members of Congress saying this new piracy bill is the end of the internet. No judge, no jury. They just shut down your website. Icke saying they'll do it. We have Google now in its transparency report admitting the feds are telling them take stuff down, quote, critical of government. Police are telling them to take stuff down. Now when I upload a video, even if it has 30 seconds of a newscast that I'm analyzing under law, fair use, everything, it's commentary, companies are registering even their commercials and things, and it automatically flags it and won't let us post it. I mean, that's the kind of smart systems they've got to surveil AI, everything we're doing. An example is police are saying they're going to get the system that's being built into the new iPhones, where they just broadcast a feed or a certain type of light to where they take control of your smartphones where you can't videotape them. That's what the globalists are doing. They're engineering into all the tech through global conventions, the systems that surveil, control us, and then we pay for it when we purchase the product. I mean, it's so diabolical.
Yeah, they built it in, and you know what I always clarify, Alex, because as a privacy advocate, somebody who really works on those privacy issues, I always make it clear to people, listen, privacy is not an end, it's a means. You know, privacy or taking your privacy away is a means of achieving something else. And in the case of us, the citizens, what your privacy does is it gives you independence. It gives you anonymity. It gives you freedom of action. It gives you freedom. And so, you know, when people say, well, why do you really care who knows blah, blah, blah? I see that, you know, I personally care. But even if you don't care, that's not the point. Privacy is a form of power. It is a means to an end. And if someone takes away your privacy, the next thing they will take away is your freedom. And I'll give you an example. Why is it people are so up in arms about gun registration? The reason people get upset about gun registration is they know that once the government knows who has the guns, then when the time comes, they'll go knocking on those people's doors.
Yeah, exactly. Let me stop you. They'll come take them, and that's happened in every country where this has happened, from Nazi Germany to Australia. Exactly. Privacy is really your safety, and governments that want your privacy are always building intelligence on you. It doesn't matter you did nothing wrong. Maybe they want your farm. Maybe they want your wife. Maybe they want to kill you and take your kids and press them into the Roman army. You know, the point is that it's not that we want our privacy because we're bad. It's because historically the bad guys want the intelligence on you.
Boy, that's beautifully said. And in the same way that you want to hang on to your privacy so you can hang on to your independence and your belongings and your freedoms, they want to take it away for the same reason. The reason people want to know everything you buy is not because they want to know everything you buy. It's because at some point in the future, they're going to want to be able to do exactly what Hitler did during World War II or leading up to it, which is to say certain people just don't qualify to buy food. You know, they said the Jews are not allowed to buy bread and milk and eggs. Yeah, you can go buy other stuff, but, you know, the basic foodstuffs, if you're Jewish, you couldn't buy them.
Well, it's currency controls. It's always an internal control system. Now the TSA's asking about a few silver coins. But if you expand into that, now they've passed a law where secondhand shops can't take cash in Louisiana. It's about tracking everything and taxing it to destroy. See, the colonies were being destroyed by the taxes because in England, the manufacturers wanted them shut down. The power to tax is the power to destroy. People say, well, who cares if the government knows everything I'm doing? The point is they want to destroy you. They want to shut you down. This is scorched earth. Katherine, stay there. Incredible. I want you to continue along that point about why this is so important, dealing with the currency controls. I'm calling it currency controls. What's the term called where they start tracking all the money and transactions in a country always during inflationary periods? You just went to the heart of this. They're setting up capital controls inside the country. They're making it hard to get your money outside the country. They're tracking everything we do. There's a reason we had privacy. There's a reason we had a Fourth Amendment, and now it's basically completely gone. I mean, the stuff that we were worried about 10 years ago, it's already surpassed that. And you were bringing up this fact that, again, it's not us that has something to hide. Look at how secretive government is. As it more and more wants to know everything we're doing, and is caught framing us as well, that's another issue of privacy. Now they want to be completely secret. Please continue.
Yeah, well, that's for darn sure, isn't it? And, you know, this E-Parasites Act that you were talking about, this act that basically says you can shut down a website if there's something on it that somebody says is copyrighted. You know, I was thinking you can go on my website, KatherineAlbrecht.com or SpyChips.com or even NoCards.org, my ancient website where we were fighting shopper cards. And on those websites, it occurred to me, under this new E-Parasites bill, if it passes, you can have a picture of me in a protest, right, with a big stop RFID sign, standing under a Walmart sign in the snow. I did that in Amherst, New Hampshire. I've done that in Texas, in Dallas. I've done it all over the country. But you could take that picture and make the argument that because I've got Walmart's logo up there in the photo, even though I took a picture on a street corner with you standing under their sign, that I'm violating their copyright. Now, where this gets interesting is because, of course, this bill says if you you violate copyright, then we can basically shut your website down. Now, there's a couple catches here, though. You can't shut down a website that's based in another country. So the first thing I would do, or if they did that to Infowars.com, first thing I would do, of course, is I would say, well, let me get an offshore ISP or an offshore hosting service. And
the problem is they're doing
over there.
So they're doing a global treaty, though. The Russians and the Chinese do this everywhere. And again, just like Righthaven, the copyright troll, just had their assets seized by federal marshals. They claim similar things and were defeated roundly in every court case that we've seen so far that went to court. But it's a fraud. It's made up. The lawyers are attempting to tell people you've got to have permission to shoot video of a street corner if there's a McDonald's sign. No, as long as you're under news and information and free speech, you're covered. So it's a fraud, but they tell you you can't show an image of Walmart that you took. That's our copyright. And then there's no judge, no jury, no nothing. They just take your website down. It's the incredible arbitrary fraud of this, and it's all just a power grab. It's like when McDonald's tried to take the name from the McDonald family and said, you can't use this on your castle in Scotland that pays for itself by having a bed and breakfast in it. You can't call it McDonald Castle. And they said, well, this name is 1,600 years old. And they sued them, and the McDonald's had to fight them and win. But it's this attempt to bring in this tyranny.
Yeah, that they own everything. And, of course, the Internet, and I'm discovering this after 6 days of being out of power and off the Internet, I don't think we recognize how much we've come to rely on it and how much we've almost eliminated other means of communication. And that's when I get a little bit nervous when I start saying, okay, so we've got this system. It works really well for us advocates to find each other. But if they take it away, we don't have backup systems.
Stay there. Let's talk about that. Long segment coming up with Dr. Katherine. Total surveillance. Lampposts going up all over the country with microphones and cameras in them. This was already happening 13 years ago. It's in my film Police State 2000 I put out in 99. I have the documents from 1998. This is a criminal group that has set up a fraud. The public is living in a false reality, and they are setting up a giant DARPA-controlled grid known as the Internet that is meant to absorb society, make it cashless, track everything, and then add fines and fees. That's another problem with cashless society. Oh, we'll put $5 fee on all your transactions. Now you pay to keep your money with us. Now companies make you get automatic transfer. Now you can't use that cash in that secondhand transaction. Now Homeland Security came out yesterday and said paying with cash is suspicious. And they told hotels, spy on people, dig through your luggage. But nobody digged through the Fed's luggage, all caught bringing in narcotics. Katherine, you were getting in, and we're going to go to some calls here, but I want to kind of shut up for 10 minutes or so and give you the floor here. I want you to run through for people, because you were getting into the fact that it's being set up to where we can't operate without it, and old communication systems are going away. Like, a lot of people want to continue to have pirate FM, micro FM. I think it's a great idea, as long as it doesn't interfere with the commercial spectrum. Now they're handing FM translators to all the big companies to put on mindless stuff like comedy or whatever. No local programming, no local interest, nothing that serves the community. And now the FCC's been talking about making it to where you can't pick up a reception in your new digital radio with all the cars coming out unless it's got a code authorizing it. So even if you put up, like they used against the Soviets, a pirate FM in, say, Romania, it won't even be picked up by the phone. Just like they can blacklist Infowars.com or alternative media. People need to realize we're entering a time where you're not just going to be able to tune into all this. People need to appreciate it. They need to understand how important it is. They need to tell everybody now about Infowars.com, about the 27-hour transmission and the free video streams that are up there right now to create a viral spread of this information. They need to donate at Infowars Moneybomb so we can... I tell people sign up at the Infowars Insider because we've been told by our experts that email is something that even if they shut us all down with that list, I could still write articles or with compression do short audios or videos and encode that and send that out to people. So we need people to sign up there for that free newsletter. I mean, we really are mounting an assault against the globalists who've created this artificial habitat for us that they're now phasing us into. So, Katherine, you've got the floor. I want you to break down what you were getting into, the threats you see, other facets, other areas, the whole futurist system, what's driving this, what the master plan is. Then we'll go to calls.
Well, and that's what I want to get into is some of the solutions. You're talking about, sending out encrypted email, getting people onto Infowars. These are all things that people should be doing. And, I'll send anybody who will ask me, hey, where do I get the information? I'll say, Infowars.com. I've got my websites up. There's a lot of places out there where people can go. You do an extraordinary job of being a clearinghouse for a lot of that. But let me also tell you, in terms of encryption, and when we start talking solutions, what drives me crazy is when people on our team, people who ought to know better, are sending those emails through Gmail, for example, or signing up for Google voicemail, for example, because Google is reading all those emails. And if they're using Google as their search engine, and I've told your listeners many times before, startpage.com is the company that I recommend as an alternative to Google, because Google is reading all of the searches that you do. So if you go in there and you search for global control grid, or you search for offshore tax havens, or you search for smart meter opposition, whatever it is you're putting in there, the fact that you typed it in, Google is using, and they are creating these incredibly detailed profiles. We know that one of the founders of Google said he wants the company to become like the mind of God. And you look at that and you say, okay, so they're scanning in all the world's books. They have become the primary means of communication in this country today, believe it or not, because that's where you go if you want to figure out, ask your question. Hey, give me a recipe for cinnamon toast, or tell me what's the latest on the power outage, or whatever it might be. People log on to Google unthinkingly. So there are some tools out there that people can use. One of them is SSL encryption. And the reason this is important, and I'm going to take a minute, and I usually don't like to get too technical on people, so I'll explain this. SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer Encryption. And what it does is it takes your communication through the Internet, which normally goes out wide open, it's like a postcard, versus a sealed envelope with, a bunch of layers of duct tape on it. That's the difference. When you send an email or you log on to a website, you are essentially sending a postcard to your Internet service provider. That's your Charter, your AT&T, your Verizon, whoever's giving you your net connection is monitoring where you go. They're monitoring what you send. They have the capability of reading your email. If you are sending from or to a Gmail account, a Yahoo account, or a Hotmail account, and many of these other free email services, not only that, but you're sending a postcard that they are reading and recording. So they take all the words out of your email, they put that into your giant profile, and the only way you can protect yourself against that level of observation is through SSL encryption. Now, people may remember a couple of years ago there was something called Pretty Good Privacy, or PGP. Really hard to implement, not very popular. I tried to use it myself, and I'm a privacy person. Even I said, oh, this is a pain. So the whole PGP privacy thing, StartPage is working on an email program that will be totally private, totally encrypted, and will incorporate PGP. It's going to be called Start Mail. It's coming out probably the end of 2012. But in the meantime, StartPage, and if people don't know what that is, Alex, it's the private search engine that people need to be using instead of Google, because they don't record all of the stuff you do. They don't record your IP address. They don't record your searches. They don't know your identity. They don't use tracking cookies. And I can vouch for them because I'm actually now a VP with the company after having him as a guest on the show a couple years back. So StartPage just made an announcement this week that they have switched over to complete SSL encryption. And now what that means is that when you log on to StartPage and you make a search, so let's say you look up offshore tax havens, or you look up Infowars, or, the latest story that we've got out there. I don't know, maybe those electric lights, the street lights that can listen to you. So when you search for that in Google, they know it. Or you look for Ron Paul, they know who all the supporters are. But if you go to StartPage and you search for that, what is new is now not only does StartPage not record you at startpage.com, but your ISP can't see what you're doing with StartPage. So your ISP no longer can record your searches. Now, the thing that has people a little confused, though, is if you click on a link. So let's say you go on. It's just like Google, by the way. And in fact, Start Page now returns 100% Google results totally privately. So we go to Google, we grab Google's results, we strip everything away from them, and then we reserve them to you. So when you go there, if you click on a link, now you're leaving the SSL encryption. You lose that encrypted protection unless you do one thing, and we're the only search engine that offers this. Click the word proxy. There's actually a little link under your search results for the outside third-party website. It'll say View Through Icke Proxy. Now, if you click that, so let's say you want to go to a government website. You know, I tried to go to just the National Weather Service website, and I have a whole bunch of things on my computer that alert me when they're doing stuff. And I had something saying, they're running a script on this page. They're loading cookies into my browser. I was like, get me out of here. So I went to startpage.com. I punched in National Weather Service.
And you were able to get there. Go ahead and finish up.
Well, what they do is Start Page gets the National Weather Service, loads it for me, and the National Weather Service never sees me, can't put a cookie on my browser, can't run a script, doesn't even know that I was there, and my ISP doesn't know I went to the National Weather Service because everything is now encrypted. So it's pretty much the most private way you can surf the internet, and I'm excited.
It certainly is. Now, going back here, though, we all know that authoritarian regimes go through your mail, and people would get mad if the post office was going through their mail, which they now do. But if it's digital mail, we're just going to have an AI computer read that, scan that, put it in your algorithm, and these companies are all on record doing this, and then you learn they have a partnership with the government because you, when you sign up the terms, don't understand you're waiving your rights. Now that's given to the government. And now we see the big mega corporations basically trying to get government to just fully sign government power over to them. It is completely predatory. I want to go to some phone calls, but Katherine, I know you've been tracking this. Is it even kind of still amazing you to actually see it happening, where there's all these calls now to start censoring the alternative media? I mean, I see that as a real coming of age for the alternative media, becoming the true dominant media. But it's also scary, the perfect storm of government, major corporations, and media that are all on the hot seat, getting together now, spinning the end of the internet as we know it, as members of Congress that have read this bill have said.
The internet is the biggest threat that they have ever faced, because for the first time in all of history, in the history of humanity, millions of people can communicate with one another instantaneously. And the government hates that. Now, they're more than happy if you want to communicate and say, oh, how much you really love their, President Obama's latest bill. But if you're going to get on there and talk about how much you know what's really going on, then they got to put an end to that. So they are coming up with, whether it's terrorism or shutting down on financial crimes, they're going to come up with a reason, they're going to have an excuse, and they're going to find ways, first of all, to monitor. This is what I was saying at the beginning of the show. You monitor first, and then you start clamping down. And that is why, again, I'm just going to repeat it. People need to find ways to use the internet and get out of the monitoring. Anybody writing, I'm to the point where I almost won't even answer a Gmail. If you write to me from a Gmail account, I don't want to write you back, because I know that everything I say to you, I may as well be saying into a megaphone.
Well, let me expand on that. Let me expand on that. We have people that sign up for our emails, but if they're with Gmail or others, Gmail will complain and call our mail spam. So, I mean, they're just total Nazis. They're out of control. And I agree, we should try to do alternative systems and develop those systems outside of Big Brother's purview. But we should politically and legally try to challenge the entire unconstitutional action on its face as well. Katherine, I want to get an update on your health, because everybody's obviously praying for you and concerned about you here in a moment. But let's start getting the calls now, because I know you've got to leave at the end of the hour, because we're going to leave the Genesis Network at that point, and that's how you're connected to us. And then we are going to transfer over to the rest of the 27-hour plus live transmission with George Noory, David Icke, and many others coming up today. If you want to donate, it's InfowarsMoneybomb.com. You can also call toll-free, 888-253-3139. And we have deals going where you can get, what is this, all 14 of my films that are on DVD for $99.95 instead of $349. That's the Alex Jones Everything Special. We never offered it at that price. It's a Moneybomb special, so you get great tools to wake yourself up more and those around you and support us. Also, you got the Alex Jones Classic DVD Special, and that is 5 films for $29.95. It's actually 6 films because the one of them has 2 films on it. Then we've got also the Patriot flags. We've got all of those to help spread the word with your neighbors and others. We have the Essential Alex Jones, my 5 best-selling films for $24.95, all available at Infowars.com. We've now cut the bumper stickers down to absolute cost. Normally $25 for the variety pack, now $5.95. Certainly get the word out against the globalists with that. We are pulling out all the stops for $19.95. You can get my 4 films on 9/11, the 9/11 documentary special. Let's go to your phone calls. We'll take a lot more as the 27 hours continues. A lot of folks would just, let the guests talk, and as I've been doing a little bit today, and mainly take calls. But we've got so much info. I tend to not be like most talk show hosts that just rely on calls. It probably would be better, though, to take more calls, because I always hear the calls and rebroadcast and wish I took more. So we'll do that for the rest of this hour and the entire next hour, and then more coming up. We've also got some other surprises coming up, so stay with us. Let's talk to Mike in Wisconsin. You're on the air with Dr. Katherine Albrecht. Go ahead.
Oh, Katherine, it's a pleasure. Alex, you're the man. What's up?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you for joining us. Are you watching us on the free video streams at Infowars.com, or are you listening?
Yes, I am. I'm watching online right now, and also I'm glad you guys are talking about online communication, because I'm in my mid-20s, and I've learned there's lots of other ways to communicate online. I don't know if Katherine's ever heard of Internet Relay Chat? Or
oh,
IRC?
yeah, it's funny. IRC was my big addiction back in graduate school. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of IRC, Internet Relay Chat, absolutely.
Are you talking about like BBS systems, and then you've got all... Yeah.
Exactly. And the nice thing about it, you can actually set them up from computer to computer. So if you've got the skills or have a friend with the skills, you can actually set up an encrypted stream just between you and a single other person. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can use it. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of IRC. It's kind of fallen out of favor with Facebook and everything else. But, yeah, I'd say that would be a great thing for people to revive.
That you're aware of it, because there are a lot of us out there that still know how to use programs like that, and we'll try to keep it alive and keep the word out for things like that. But real quick,
yeah,
Alex,
keep developing the new systems, because what we need to be doing, and this is what I love about Start Page, when they passed this thing that said, hey, we want to start. All of the ISPs have to log all the traffic that people do, all the websites you go to. We were like, whoa, time out. How can we technologically, in this era where we got so many skills, we got great technology on our team, on the Freedom team. And so the team there at Start Page, we got together and said, all right, so how do we get around it? And so that's how we came up with a proxy. We said, yeah, log away, ISPs, be my guest. You record every place I go, because you won't be able to see a darn thing. I can go to 100 websites in a day, and you won't know.
Well, here's a San Francisco Chronicle article today. Smart meters send almost 10,000 signals a day. I mean, yeah, instead of a guy coming by once a week finding out what you used, oh, we're Greeks bearing gifts, Troy. Take our Trojan horse. And then it's tagged onto your bill to pay for something, spying on what you watch on TV. And you tell somebody this. I'd tell people this stuff 10 years ago. They'd laugh at me. Now it's in their face. I mean, this is such an out-of-control system. Sir, you had a question?
I actually run We Are Change Milwaukee, and I know this is a little off-topic, but I'm going to be quick. The General Assembly in Milwaukee, I offered to debate some of the leaders on camera, in the public eye, and they denied me. And I started to investigate deeper into the leadership of the Occupy Milwaukee movement, and I found out that one of the leaders is actually part of the Freedom Road socialist organization.
No, almost, listen. The socialists know they're not popular, so they call for a demonstration against Wall Street corruption that's actually funding socialism. And then the well-meaning people show up, and then the socialists come and don't say who they are and try to co-opt it. But they've pretty much failed. That's why they're now going to billy club them. It may be to actually make people have sympathy for them to some more come out. I'm not sure. But, Katherine, what's your view on the whole Occupy Wall Street situation?
Well, you know, they're not our team, that's for sure. The people out there. And, you know, the more they call for socialism, the more the big corporations are going to say, oh, please don't throw me in the briar patch, anything but the government takeover of our business. They'd love nothing more for the government and the corporations to become one, because then it'll be them against us, and they're going to be like the 800-pound gorilla on their end of the teeter-totter, and we'll just be the little tiny, 5-pound public. So they would love, George Soros, it's been said, is behind a lot of this stuff, because they would totally love total fascism, where the government takes over all the banks, creates a big world bank, takes over all the businesses, all the petroleum companies, creates one big global system. The fat cats will eat at the trough, and we little guys will have zero power because they'll control everything, all consolidated.
Well, Jesse Ventura was on yesterday, and he's like, I think Occupy Wall Street's good, at least the folks he's talked to, and I've run into a lot of them. You know, they're tired of Wall Street taking over Washington. Well, it's actually certain elements, the mega banks, the globalists that have taken it over, who've gotten the tens of trillions. It's not more money that's needed in taxes. It's that we need our money back that's gone offshore. You know, the big banks won't loan our own money we gave them, and then we pay them back interest on the bailout we gave them. I mean, that's the message you've got to get. And I've tried to go to Occupy Wall Street. Rob Jacobson has. So many others. And their leaders come over and they say, listen, you get out of here with that. Okay, we want socialism. Now, the crowds themselves are good people. And they always say there's no leader here. But it turns out time and time again, it is the Democratic Party. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I got to say, I'm all for the crowds out there because they're doing the right thing. They're standing up and they're trying to get and trying to say enough is enough. We're sick of it. What is disgusting to me is what always happens. We saw it over in Egypt too. You had the public rise up and say no, and then crafty powers that be are working behind the scenes to figure out how to take that momentum and turn it into something ugly. So I would say to all the Occupy folks, you guys rock. But be very careful who you're listening to, because if you're listening to people who say the government has to take over the corporations, you're hearing the wrong message. That's not going to be the solution. That's going to leave you even more powerless when those two forces consolidate and then together work against you. We're really going to be in trouble.
You're right. Let's go quickly to calls. Ivan in Florida. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, brother.
I wanted to take advantage because you have Katherine Albrecht on the show, and
yes,
she's
an
expert in RFID technology and things of that nature.
Right.
Yeah, I noticed.
Go ahead.
In the toll roads, how you have the scanners that read you can buy a Sun Pass, things of that, and you don't have to pay the tolls. Well, I've noticed in Orlando here, they've been putting those on public roads, and I was wondering if that's just like a local phenomenon, or is it? Or have you noticed that?
No, it's nationwide.
No, but let me tell you, you SunPass people were the guinea pigs, in fact. You guys were the very first. The SunPass down in Florida was the first state that had those toll transponders used to experiment with traffic surveillance. And so what's happening now is anybody stupid enough and lazy enough to have a toll transponder on their windshield instead of stopping and paying cash like all good Americans who value their freedom ought to do, you guys are the vanguard of total automobile tracking, and it's happening right now. They can put a reader for that anywhere in the country. They're putting them in gantries. That's the overpasses on the freeway, miles from the toll roads.
I saw an article, Katherine, 10 years ago where San Francisco was doing it.
That's right. They're doing it. And, you want to speak about RFID. The other thing you don't want to do, please don't get a toll transponder. If you have one, get rid of it. My husband and I call it the privacy tax. We spend a little longer in line. We have to actually carry cash with us, but that's what protects your privacy. The other thing you don't want to get, and if you have one, tear it up, is an enhanced driver's license to get into Canada or Mexico.
It's got an RFID, same thing with the passport, but expanding on that, Katherine, it's not only that, we've got to keep using cash as much as we can, or they're going to totally phase it out.
Amen. Amen. So, start doing your grocery shopping with cash, folks. Start doing everything you do with cash. They always say use it or lose it with your muscles. Use it or lose it with your privacy, and especially with your cash. One thing I want to say, though, the passports, the booklet passports, have a read range of about 2 inches. The enhanced driver's licenses, though, have a read range of 35 feet. They're not encrypted, and in fact, every Walmart that is using RFID to read the underwear shelf, not making this up, the actual underwear, can read your enhanced driver's license right through your purse or pocket as you stand there in front of the underwear. No exaggeration, absolutely 100%.
And by the way, the globalists
Walmart can't even prevent it.
The globalists are super ultra bold, and they know that with all this RFID, it's going to cause a rash of identity theft. Their answer will then be RFID with a biometric print. That's how they're going to force this in. I appreciate your call there from Florida. Good to hear from you. Katherine, how's your health?
Well, I'm doing good. I've got a new blog to let people know. My regular website's KatherineAlbrecht.com, where all my radio archives are. But I just started a blog at WordPress.KatherineAlbrecht.com. Love to hear from people, but I'm posting updates on my health. I am almost done with chemotherapy, starting radiation therapy, feeling actually really strong and really fantastic. So I think I'm going to beat this thing.
Well, praise God for that, and the prayers certainly won't hurt. Katherine, I really appreciate you spending time with us here on the 4th annual Infowars Moneybomb. I look forward to speaking to you in the future.
Hey, congrats with that 27-hour thing. You go, Alex.
Hey, I just ate something. I'm feeling good now. Thank you. We've got a bunch of other guests coming up, but this hour is going to be wide open. Michael, Tommy, and Patrick, and Jared, they need to be given off-air, John, the call-in number at our studio so I can go to them first before I give out the general number for everybody else. I'm going to come back into the 5th hour of the 27-hour transmission. On the other side, it won't be on Genesis or the satellite. You've got to go to Infowars.com to find the free audio and video streams right now. 20-plus hours more coming up. 22 hours straight ahead.